So I hope that is something that as well NEMA can be able to assist us with, together with Kura, because Kura in Nairobi has been in charge of a lot of these quarries in Embakasi East, Embakasi Central, as well as Kasarani and around Dandora, Mr. Speaker. So I want to thank the committee, and I urge other committees to do such work for the petitions that we've brought on the issues of Nairobi to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next order. Oh, Senator Whip, can you table the papers on behalf of the majority?
Mr. Speaker,
point of order, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point of order?
I wanted to add my voice on the petition by Senator Milgo. I was on the line.
You are not there. The screen is, my screen is not showing anything.
Unless they check what is wrong, because
okay.
I already...
Okay, let her.
Okay.
Okay, proceed.
Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for giving me a chance to add my voice on this particular petition. I am a member of the Education Committee, and therefore I know when the petition was presented before the committee, but I only want to make some two observations. Mr. Speaker, as much as I sympathize with the people of Kasarani constituency in Jiru area because of the much resources the CDF office put into the facility and the delay of the opening of the school. But I also want to point out that the Ministry of Education, which is in charge of registration of schools, must make sure that before a school is registered, is in an environment that will not pose much problems in the future of the school. This is because this school is surrounded by quarries. It is also surrounded by a sewerage plant system. And so I foresee a future where, a situation where in future, the school will still be faced by a lot of environmental problems. And so I was just urging the concerned institutions, whether it is the office of a constituency MP or the Ministry of Education, before they allow a school to be built in any place, it must be in an environment that will be friendly for the institution. This is a learning institution that will be hosting many, many students from Nairobi and the environs, and therefore it should be having a good environment, a conducive learning environment. I thank you.
Okay. Whip.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, Thursday, 11th of February, 2021. One, the Public Health COVID-19 Indoor Meetings Rules, legal notice number 224 of 2020, published on the 30th of December, 2020. Two, a report on public service compliance with the values and principles in Articles 10 and 232 of the Constitution for the year 2019-2020. Three, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the County Assembly of Homa Bay for the year ended 30th June 2019. Four, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the County Executive of Homa Bay for the year ended 30th June 2019. Five, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Uasin Gishu County Assembly for the year ended 30th June 2019. Six, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the County Executive of Uasin Gishu for the year ended 30th June 2019. 7, report of the Auditor General for the financial statements of the County Assembly of Samburu for the year ended 30th June 2019. 8, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the County Executive of Samburu for the year ended 30th June 2019. 9, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the County Assembly of Elgeyo Marakwet for the year ended 30th June 2019. 10, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Muranga County Executive for the year ended 30th June 2019. 11, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the County Assembly of Nandi for the year ended 30th June 2019. 12, report of the Auditor General for the financial statements of the County Executive of Nandi for the year ended 30th June 2019. 13, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the County Executive of Elgeyo Marakwet for the year ended 30th June 2019. 14, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the County Executive of Homa Bay for the year ended 30th June 2019. 15, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the County Executive of Uasin Gishu for the year ended 30th June 2019. 16, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the County Executive of Kisumu for the year ended 30th June 2019. 17, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the County Executive of Kisumu for the year ended 30th June 2019. 18, report of the Auditor General on the Kenya Health Sector Program, Support 3, Danida Reference 104, Kenya 810-300, the grant for the year ended 30th June 2020, County Government of Kisii. 19, report of the Auditor General on the Kisumu Urban Project Advance Account, CKE 1035-01G, for the year ended 30th June 2020, County Government of Kisumu. 20, report of the Auditor General on Kisumu Urban Project Cash Expenditure Fund, CKE 1035-01G, for the year ended 30th June 2020 for the County Government of Kisumu. And the report of the Auditor General on the Sanitation Output Based Aid Project, that is IDA grant number TF014251 and number TF0A5607 for the year ended 30th June 2020, Nairobi City Water and Sewerage Company Limited. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay.
Okay. Senator Wachila yako.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, Thursday, 11th February 2021. 1. Volume 1, report of the Senate Sessional Committee on the County Public Accounts and Investments on the consideration of the audit reports of the following county executives for the financial year 2015-2016, 2016-2017, 2017-2018. A. Baringo. B. Elgeyo Marakwet. C. Homa Bay. D. Kakamega. E. Kiambu. 2. Volume 2, report of the Senate Sessional Committee of the Public Accounts and Investments on the consideration of the audit reports of the following county executives for the financial year 2015-2016, 2016-2018, 2016-2017, 2017-2018. A. Kisii. B. Mandera. C. Mombasa. D. Taita Taveta. E. Kilifi. 3. Volume 3, report of the Senate Sessional Committee on the County Public Accounts and Investments on the consideration of the audit reports of the following county executives for the financial year 2015-2016, 2016-2017, and 2017-2018. A. Garissa, B. Wajir, D. Narok, C. Narok, D. Kericho, and E. Lamu. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the papers.
Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Okay, Chairman. Ochila yako.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that this House adopts the report of the Sessional Committee on the County Public Accounts laid on the table of the Senate today, Thursday, 11th February 2021. 1. Volume 1, report of the Senate Sessional Committee on the County Public Accounts and Investments on the consideration of the audit reports of the following county executives for the financial years 2015-2016, 2016-2017, 2017-2018, A. Baringo, B. Elgeyo Marakwet, C. Homa Bay, D. Kakamega, E. Kiambu. 2. Volume 2, report of the Senate Sessional Committee on the County Public Accounts and Investment on the consideration of the audit reports of the following county executives for the financial year 2015-2016, 2016-2017, 2017-2018. A. Kisii, B. Mandera, C. Mombasa, D. Taita Taveta, E. Kilifi. Volume 3, report of the Senate Sessional Committee on the County Public Accounts and Investments on the consideration of the audit reports of the following county executive for the financial years 2015-2016, 2016-2017, and 2017-2018. A. Garissa, B. Wajir, D. Kericho, and E. Lamu. I beg to give notice.
Okay, next order.
Order number 7, statements.
Okay, Senator Kakamega, Cleophas Malala is not there, is deferred. Senator Gertrude Musurve is not there, is deferred. Senator Mary Seneta.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 48-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights on the roadmap to the activities leading to the 2022 general election. In the statement, the committee should 1. Outline the roadmap of activities, practical strategies, actions, and targets to be undertaken in preparation for the 2022 general election. 2. Expound on the methods to be used in the demarcations of electoral areas as well as the reorganization of polling stations. 3, state the measures, if any, that have been put in place to ensure that the National Voter Register is updated to remove the dead voters and include all eligible voters. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any interest. Okay, Senator Wambua, you're not, it's not reflecting, but you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I think there is a problem with the system, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity to make a comment on the statement sought by Senator Mary Senator. Speaker, I know the statement must have gone through the process for it to be approved, to be read on the floor. But, Mr. Speaker, listening to that statement, it just raises procedural issues and the day-to-day running of all the institutions that are required to be doing the things that the senator is talking about. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't know, Mr. Speaker, really what specifically it is that kind of statement is supposed to do. I have no problem with it, but I just want to understand, Mr. Speaker, it raises eyebrows, really, it does. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Can I say something?
Yes, Senator Langat. Maybe you need to look at the statement. You can give you a copy, you see what she's raising. Professor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for also allowing me to add my voice into this very important statement. Up to this time, it's somehow very surprising, Mr. Speaker, that the IPC even has not come out very clearly on the roadmap towards 2022. Even the composition of the commissioners up to this particular time, Mr. Speaker, is still not enough to run an electoral commission effectively. So I want to say that somehow we are undercover by the activities of BPI with a perception that everything will be handled by the BPI, which is still facing a lot of challenges. Therefore, I concur with Mary Senator that this particular actually, this statement is so important that we need to understand the measures, if any, that have been put in place to ensure that the National Voter Register is updated to remove the dead voters and include all eligible voters. These updates are very important, Mr. Speaker, for such a very important commission. The citizens have to be updated on the progress of towards this particular important exercise in 2022. I support this statement and it should be taken seriously, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Senator Moses Wetangula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to support this statement brought by the distinguished Senator Mary Senator. And because, Mr. Speaker, if you read the Kriegler report, the Kriegler report stated very clearly that elections is not about the day people go to cast their ballot. It is about the roadmap to elections, including but not limited to issuance of IDs, which must be fair and equitable, registration of voters, which must be fair and equitable, and above all, the integrity of the voters' roll. So what Senator Mary Senator is asking is very spot on. We need to encourage the IEBC that is currently in office to continue making it known to the public how many people are getting registered in the process of continuous registration, how regular are they updating the registers after registration, and the linkage between the issuance of IDs and the registration of new voters, and the updating of registers by bringing on board people who have either lost their IDs or need to re-enter the voters' roll if they have, for one reason or another, been expunged or left out. Mr. Speaker, we also have a situation going to the next elections when in the 10-year cycle, IEBC ought to be reviewing and delimiting electoral boundaries. We know that the 290 constituencies are locked in the Constitution, but they still have a duty to review boundaries, especially in areas where the demographic growth has been either extremely positive or negative, so that boundaries can be recreated to have equitable representation of voters. But they now face even a bigger challenge, because BBI, if it goes through, and I hope it will, is creating another 70 constituencies. These 70 constituencies are away from the norm, takes away the mandate of IEBC, and the numbers have already been distributed within the bill. So IEBC will then have to go to Kiambu and find a way of how to create boundaries to give them an additional 6 constituencies, because that's their duty. They'll have to go to Kajiado, go to Bungoma, Nairobi, everywhere. And their level of preparedness is very important, because we do not want a situation where, like Nairobi, boundaries are gerrymandered to give certain advantages to certain areas and disadvantage others. So this, Mr. Speaker, the committee, I believe, is of justice and legal, which is chaired by Senator Mogeni, need to deal with this matter very urgently, so that the country can get to have an assurance that even with the lean IEBC that we have, they are doing a job that can satisfy the needs and desires of Kenyans as we go to the next elections. Thank you.
Senator Linturi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me add my voice to the statement being sought by Mary Senator, and appreciate that is really timely, because when you look at the time from now to the date of the general election, and for purposes, Mr. Speaker, of ensuring that there is confidence amongst Kenyans, a few things must be done the right way, and people must be throughout appraised on what is being done. Mr. Speaker, as we sit here today, the IMBC is not fully constituted. We would want to know the steps and the measures being put in place to ensure IMBC is fully constituted, and IMBC has enough time really to prepare. Mr. Speaker, if I am not wrong, and I would beg to be corrected, that there are certain challenges that IMBC may end up facing, and especially in terms of the creation of the new constituency boundaries, because I think any IMBC must create on the limit in boundaries not less than a year before the next general election. So if they have to do it, Mr. Speaker, I think they must be in full gear trying to get organized to achieve this deadline. So as they prepare, as the committee is trying to bring this statement, then it is important, Mr. Chairman, own your houses. Even better, inform me when I have finished, because I wouldn't mind your information. And this is what I would want you to inform me on, because, Mr. Speaker, yes, it is true that people want constituencies. And as we get this statement, I would want the chairman to further bring out the expected change in cost of running these constituencies, and these costs should not only be limited to the salaries of members of parliament and the other allowances, but also must extend to the level of the infrastructure and development that is required to house or to maintain the extra 70 members of parliament. Because, Mr. Speaker, if the design of this chamber was to accommodate 67, and out of that the limitation, you have another 70, it means the seats here must be readjusted. That means extra expenditure. It means that, Mr. Speaker, the support required of a member of parliament in terms of drivers, PAs, and wherever must also be factored in. So we would want to understand that budget, how much it will be able to cost the taxpayer, and finally, Mr. Speaker, whether they will find it appropriate to design a uniform for members of parliament, because parliament will be so bloated that it will not even be easy to be able to identify one another. When you increase parliament to the level of 600 or 400 and something members of parliament, honestly, Mr. Speaker, you will require a uniform for identification, just like any other secondary school, like Alliance, or Mangu, or any other that has a uniform. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Masinza, Shionga.
I was standing on a point of order, Mr. Speaker. I was just imagining, is the Honorable Senator in order to want to write other standing orders on uniform of members of parliament? And already we have code of how we can trace in this parliament, surely. Are we going back to class 1, class 2, class nursery? Thank you.
Senator Linturi.
Mr. Speaker, we are trying to be positive and think progressively. Because when you have a National Assembly of 420, a stream in our normal day secondary schools or any other stream in any secondary school is 40 times 8 classes, which is 320. And for you to identify those students or pupils, you must be dressed in a in a uniform so that you're able to identify one another. So when a parliament has 500 or so members of parliament, Mr. Speaker, the only prudent way is to get a uniform way of trying to identify one another, so that, because even so many strangers will be around, and the security of parliament will be, honestly, Mr. Speaker, at risk.
Senator Mogeni, you still want to inform Senator Linturi?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I think I want to join other senators in appreciating the statement that is being sought by Senator Mary. Senator, because it raises very critical issues surrounding our 2022 elections. Mr. Speaker, the only point of information I wanted to disclose to my learned friend is that in the BBI, the application of Article 89, Sub-Article 4 of the Constitution that requires that new constituencies must be in place 12 months before a general election, have been stayed by the BBI report in the transition clauses. So that, Mr. Speaker, even if the BBI report was to pass in, let's say, December of this year, still the new constituencies will be applied in the 2022 elections. But I agree with Mary Senator that there is a lot of work cut out for IBC, because, Mr. Speaker, other than the issue she has raised about constituencies, I've no doubt that even boundaries for our wards will greatly be altered, because if you create 12 constituencies in Nairobi, it means that you are going to have new wards. Mr. Speaker, in the last general election, I think we were guided by the Legale report, where the minimum number of wards in our constituency was given as 3. The average is 4, but I think there are a few that have up to 7. But it means that we shall have an alteration of even our ward boundaries. Given the fact that if BBI was to pass, the 12 months period that obligates the new constituencies not to apply to a general election will not be applied, I agree that there is work cut out for IEBC, and it's good that we engage them so that we test their preparedness to undertake this very important task. But my committee is up to task.
There's a point of order from Senator Linturi, yes.
Mr. Speaker, though it's not my tradition or my norm to interrupt the Senior Counsel, Okongo Mugene, and the Chair of the Justice Committee, I just feel, Mr. Speaker, that is misleading the House and the country. That Article 89, Sub-Article 4, has been stained by the BBI report. Mr. Speaker, the BBI report is just a report. It has not gained the force of law. It has not been passed. So how can it be able to stay a constitutional provision on an active document that we are all relying on? Unless and until the Kenyans adopt that one, that is probably why I wouldn't be able to agree with him. And because we don't know the outcome of the BBI, then the best thing is to apply the law as is and not to imply that BBI will just pass, and for that matter, that particular constitutional provision will not apply.
Senator Mogeni.
Mr. Speaker, I have always known Senator Linturi as somebody who listens keenly. I began by saying, if the BBI report was to pass. When I've used the word if, it means the position will only change if BBI report passes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Next statement is by Senator Dr. Abdullahi Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point of order?
I'm very sorry to have interrupted Dr. Ali, whom I have a lot of respect to, but I wanted to get a clarification from where you sit, Mr. Speaker, the direction on where you have directed this very important statement to, and again, the urgency, Mr. Speaker, on the issues raised in the statement needs your direction so that at least we can get to know this information from IEBC, because the issue of even reorganizations of polling stations, demarcations of wards and constituencies,
okay,
we need to know.
Okay. I think you are right. I want to commit this statement to the Committee of Legal Affairs. And I think it's a very important statement that is being sought, just like has been said by members here, that as we prepare to get to elections, the country will start getting very anxious. And people want to know how prepared we are. Because if we don't plan and prepare, we are planning to fail. And there are issues, timelines that have also been mentioned here. So I think the committee will move with speed to bring a report. Maybe you'll know who to talk to so that you can bring a report back to this House. Senator Abdullahi Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From the onset, I want to say that the statement which appears there, so a bit been changed, and I've agreed with the Secretariat that they will send to the committee the original statement I sent, which is, Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to Standing Order 46.2b, not 46.2b, 48.1, I rise to seek a statement from the Chairperson Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. In the statement, the Chairperson should respond to the following. What policy or regulatory framework guides county governments on non-remittance of employee statutory deductions, non-payment of work injury benefits, and other, including pension and other labor-related violations? What measures has the government put in place to protect county employees against non-remittance of employees' deductions and work injury benefits, and also pensions deductions? What is the status of Wajir County plus other counties in the country when it comes to remittances of such deductions, especially PAYE, NHIF, NSSF, pensions, and other statutory deductions? Mr. Speaker, sir, why I'm saying that is that, for example, Wajir has not sent the remittances for NSSF for 7 months. It has not sent pension, both deductions for pension, for 10 months. NHIF, they had agreed at the beginning, and later they did not pay the balance. So now they are being told it will be stopped. And this is happening all over the country, Mr. Speaker. It's not only Wajir. We have had several from other counties. I will want the committee, not the specific committee for labor, to look into these things because they are really labor related and not issue of because NHIF is there or finance is there. Whether they cooperate with other committees, I don't care, but I think the labor committee should look into this issue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Ledama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to comment on the statement raised by Dr. Ali. And I think, Mr. Speaker, this is a matter which does not only affect county governments, but also even affect this Senate, in particular the staff of the senators. And this is a bigger problem. And I think what I would like to see is a way where Treasury can also be involved, because we are all alive to the fact that county government do not receive their money on time. Senate office and parliamentary staff have also not been paid. Today, Mr. Speaker, is the 10th of, is it the 10th or the 9th? The 11th. And the deadline for submitting taxes, PAYE, is on the 9th. So when we do not, receive the money, and when the county government do not receive the money, these penalties continue to increase. So I think we've got to look at this issue in a more broader perspective, where instead of these government entities accruing more taxes, they can be able to find a way to discuss with Treasury, or this Parliament passes a law that these penalties do not continue increasing. Mr. Speaker, sir, I sit with Dr. Ali in the Health Committee, and we sat with NHIF, and NHIF brought up the same issues. And there, we were able to request NHIF to give a moratorium of about 3 months without charging any penalties or without stopping the services that they render to the staff because of the challenge we have in revenue collection in this country. Mr. Speaker, I think this is a matter that the Committee of Labor should find a way to engage, also invite Treasury, invite KRA, invite all these other entities to find how do we then stop these penalties and how do we waive them to ensure that at least, when county governments are paying what is due to these statutory bodies, they don't continue paying more penalties. Otherwise, we're going to continue just digging a big hole, which we cannot be able to fit. So I support this statement, and I hope that the Labour Committee will take it seriously and even propose an amendment to certain laws, like maybe the KRA Act, so that, when these taxes are due, they can be able to, if it is a government entity, they do not penalize these entities because of the reason why the Treasury has not sent the money. Otherwise, I support.
Senator Christopher Lagat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to say that this particular of counties failing to pay employees on time, and worst part of it is failure to remit the statutory deductions that they have already deducted from their workers, and even sometimes it is reflected in their pay slips that they have been deducted and failed to be remitted to various respective institutions. Mr. Speaker, this has become a notorious act by several counties and even other institutions. I remember when I was the chair of education, the same problem was brought from about 7 universities, including Mo University, where I was, that, the employees are complaining that some of them have become blacklisted by various financial institutions. They could not even go for loans and the rest. This is punishing the employees of various counties, Mr. Speaker, and this should be taken very seriously. If there are counties that they have money, they have deducted from their employees, it is reflected in their pay slips, and they have failed to surrender to various institutions, this is a crime. I would like to call upon those, the Labour Committee to take this one very seriously. And even a list of shame be put in place that all those counties that have failed to remit these particular finances be blacklisted and be put into the newspapers and then be brought here to explain the reason behind their heinous acts. So I want to support this statement and say the Labour Committee should take it seriously and it should be very urgent so that we may address this particular problem. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr.
Mr. Speaker, I want to support the statement, but I want to distinguish the issues raised by Senator Ledama on non-remittance, because the non-remittance, although it's an issue, is not what Senator Ali was saying, if I understood the statement. If I understood what you were saying about the non-remittance of statutory deductions, where the deductions have been deducted from the employee. That is what I understood to be your statement. Now, both the NHIF, NSSF Act treat non-remittance as criminal action. NSSF and NHIF have prosecutors who do not operate through the DPP. So what is happening in counties is that those prosecutors for those particular statutory bodies have been compromised so that they do not, of course, lodge complaints, because ideally the person in charge should be charged. We are aware of a lot of employees who leave office either after the contractual period, and when they go to pick their retirement benefits, they realize the employers have not remitted. For purposes of your statement, it's a criminal action, and I hope that when the committee sits, they can lodge those formal complaints with the prosecutors in those statutory bodies. For the non-remittance of money under Article 219 that Senator Ledama is raising, it's a valid issue. But it's a valid issue and which we have not tackled as a Senate. We have not addressed this issue, and Speaker, maybe at some point, the Finance Committee Chair can address this issue seriously, so that a declaration can be made that counties are not receiving their benefits, workers have not been paid, and the reasons therefore. Because, and I want Ledama to listen to this point, the argument by this Senate should address the Cabinet Secretary to say, you cannot look at the bank account of Makueni and tell them the money in Central Bank has not been used. Because Makueni cannot withdraw that money in sacks when it's not due for payment or when it has not been approved. It's not the law. So if Narok has 1 billion shillings in their account, you cannot say, I will not remit more money. Because it's not their choice. If the money is due, it should be deducted. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, we should authorize all 47 counties and governors to go with trucks at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year and collect all the money from Central Bank and go and bank it somewhere so that they can utilize it. But since they cannot do that, the monthly deductions that the schedule that we pass is the guideline for release of money and not any other framework. And that is what we should be addressing. Thank you.
Senator Njeru Ndwiga.
Yes, I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, most of what I wanted to say has been captured by Senator Mutula. But I want to emphasize that non-remittance of statutory deductions, when the deductions have already been done from the employees, Mr. Speaker, That is criminal. In fact, what we have are employers who are stealing from their employees. Mr. Speaker, it is so painful when an employee has been deducted, NHIF, for example, which covers them and their dependents. And the moment they try to get into a medical facility, to a health facility, they find they cannot access. Why? Because the deductions have not been transmitted. Mr. Speaker, we have instances where employees cannot even access school fees, loans from their SACCOs or other emergencies from their SACCOs. Why? Because the employers have not remitted deductions, have not remitted dues already deducted from those employees. Mr. Speaker, I quite agree that it is criminal. And it is not just happening in county governments. It's happening with very, very, very many employers. Mr. Speaker, very many institutions. Mr. Speaker, we have a list, and I have seen a list of complaints from Cusco and from many other circles that employees are becoming notorious, deducting monies from their employees and not submitting to wherever it should be submitted. You look at the CRB today, Mr. Speaker. Very many Kenyans are listed at the CRB, yes, and the very young ones. And these are employees of these institutions. Mr. Speaker, it is so criminal. Now that means that those fellows cannot borrow money from any other source. They're already listed there. And it is their own circle. It is their own employer who has behaved in an irresponsible manner. So, Mr. Speaker, I quite agree that our Committee of Labor should be very diligent. Look at this issue, and perhaps we should find a way of enforcing that all deductions. In fact, it is criminal already not to remit. But these things happen every day, and Kenyans have nowhere to go. I think it is time, Mr. Speaker, that this House finds a way to criminalize properly that behavior. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader, your last statement.
Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to Standing Orders 52, Standing Order 52.1, I hereby present the Senate the business of the House for the week commencing Tuesday, 16th February 2021. Allow me first to take this opportunity to welcome all honorable senators back from the long recess period. It is my hope that you all took the opportunity to meet with constituents, families, and friends, and that you took time to rest a bit while at it. I also take this opportunity to thank all honorable senators for their commitment and dedication to serving the people of Kenya and dutifully guarding gains of devolution during the last session. The Speaker, sir, on Tuesday, 16th February 2021, the Senate Business Committee will meet to schedule the business of the Senate. On that day, the Senate will consider bills for which, following the judgment of the High Court in Constitutional Petition number 284 of 2019, the resolution process contemplated under Article 110.3 of the Constitution was completed by both Senate Speakers of Parliament. The Senate will also consider motions, petitions, and statements and continue with consideration of business that will not be concluded in today's order paper. On Wednesday, 17th, 2021, the Senate will continue with business that will not be concluded on Tuesday, 16th February 2021, and any other business scheduled for the Senate Business Committee, while on Thursday, 18th February 2021, the Senate will continue with business that will not be concluded on Wednesday, 17th February 2021, and any other business. Mr. Speaker, sir, as honorable senators will recall, the judgment given by the High Court in Constitutional Petition number 284 of 2019 had far-reaching implications on the business of the Senate. I take this opportunity to thank all senators for their patience and understanding as the Office of the Speaker and that of the Senate leadership has continued to engage our counterparts in the National Assembly to fast-track the process of regularizing and conforming to Article 110(3) of the Constitution. So far, I wish to report that the Senate has made tremendous progress in republishing the bills affected by High Court ruling, and to this end, a total of 10 bills are in the process of republication. A total of 19 bills have already been published, and a total of 15 bills are undergoing concurrence process. 2 other bills are scheduled or undergoing second reading as indicated in today's order paper, while 1 other bill was assented to by His Excellency the President. Allow me to take this opportunity to inform honorable senators that the Senate Business Committee is working on a framework for fast-tracking consideration and passage of said bills upon introduction in the Senate. Mr. Speaker, sir, in conclusion, the issue of COVID-19 pandemic cannot be overstated. The pandemic has continued to persist in a third wave, with a third wave being anticipated in the near future. I continue to urge each and every one of us to adhere to the Ministry of Health protocols and to the guidelines issued by the Speaker on keeping safe and preventing the spread of the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, I thank you and hereby lay the statement on the table of the House. Thank you.
Next order. What is it, Senator Sakaja? Next order.
Order number 8, the Mang Bin Bill, Senate Bills number 9 of 2020, second reading.
Honorable Senators, at close of business yesterday, Senator Sani was on the floor and she had 3 minutes, a balance of 3 minutes. Senator Zani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was at the point at which I was trying to tell or to introduce the idea to Senator Wambua that also the aspect of value addition, I think, is very, very key in one way or another. Mr. Speaker, nowadays you will find that, for example, certain products in the market, in the Committee of Education, we've been talking about feeding programs, especially for ECD, young children in schools. And for example, a simple meal, for example, like porridge, can be enhanced by Ndengu, by the Mang beans, so that the children can have a healthier diet. And many other ways, you know. People are becoming more creative and innovative. For example, even nowadays you find, sometimes you find samosas that are made from peas, that are made from mang beans, and things like that. So that variety is something that, that can fall into the object of this bill. Other things like promoting productivity is what I was talking about. Introduction of modern mang bean farming technologies, and all these are very, very key. Mr. Speaker, another very important aspect is the responsibilities that are being given to the national and the county governments. This is very, very key. And I think more and more, most of the bills that are coming to this House are moving into the direction of giving allocation of certain duties to the national and certain duties to the counties as per the Constitution 2010. And that's done very well in the second part of this bill, which moves on to give specific responsibilities in Clause 4 to the national governments, including overall measures to overall improve the production, again, national standards and policies, technical assistance, which is very, very key, because we know that for many farmers who are still probably at the level of subsistence, when you give them technical assistance, it helps to introduce to improve the productivity. So all these are very key, and the aspect of research, of course, just ensuring that new ways of doing things are introduced, increase accessibility and affordable inputs to the growers. This bill further moves on also to give responsibilities to the county. And I think more and more of the bills that we're coming up in this house are giving responsibility to the CEC members within the counties in terms of at least being both overseers of the processes that are going on in their counties, but really taking charge. And I think Senator Wambua at one point might want to put together these CECs in some sort of conference or a discussion or in a seminar so that some of these ideas can be introduced to them so that they can infuse. Because what I see is more and more we're having so much being pushed to them. So if you do not find a way to sort of catch a niche with this specific topic with them, you might find it is mixed with other issues. So you might want them to begin to think a little bit broadly and a little bit in depth about how the mung beans within each of these counties where they're going to apply this. Ask them for their plans, ask them for their projections, ask them how they want to go about it, which agricultural extension services will there be. And Senator Wambua would also know that some of these will be interested in other crops, so there'll be competition for this as well. So the emphasis to ensure that this crop is entrenched will need that extra effort. Enforcing regulations and standards which have been put in will be also very, very key. Promotion, circulation, and access to timely market information. All these are very key responsibilities that are given to the CEC. Of course, the issue of availing inputs and implements is also an issue of the budget. So very, very critical. In fact, most of the time, as we say in Kenya, we're very good at coming up with legislation, but when it comes to actual implementation, it becomes a problem. My time is up. I support, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sakaja.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, this is why I had indicated interest. It was for this one, so I apologize for earlier. I want to thank Senator Wambua for this bill and for sponsoring it. Mr. Speaker, we do realize that the mang bills, first of all, I must confess, I didn't know mang beans is ndengu. I thought they only called green grams, but mang beans is another name for ndengu. This is a crop that grows predominantly in arid and semi-arid areas. Senator Wambua's county is one of those areas. And so it has direct relevance, not just to the country generally, but even to his own specific county. And indeed, that is why we're in this house, to protect the interests of our counties, to think about our people and their issues economically, etc. So congratulations for bringing this. Mr. Speaker, when in the National Assembly, there was a bill that was brought in the Senate, and I think it passed and came to the National Assembly, on potatoes. That was by Senator Karue Muriuki of Nyandarua. And Mr. Speaker, it was very easy for members in the National Assembly to try and make light of it and say the Senate has no business, they're doing potato bills, you know, and joke around it. But when you actually look at the impact of such legislation, these are the kind of bills that speak directly to the common mwananchi, they speak directly to the economy, and they speak directly to what the, you know, Senator Omanga wants me to say hustlers. But really what the common mwananchi is looking at. So even on this one, I know they will try and make light of it and say we're legislating on dengue, but it's an important thing to legislate. Mr. Speaker, I'm sitting next to the chair of agriculture. He will tell you agriculture is 60% of our GDP as a country. 60% of our GDP or economic activities. But Mr. Speaker, I am always at pains to reconcile a mismatch in economics. That despite agriculture doing 60% of GDP contribution, agriculture does less than 5% of revenue. Its contribution to revenue is less than 5%. And it is because of a number of issues. Number one, Mr. Speaker, as a country, our agriculture has mainly been subsistence, and we have not moved to value addition. And so if you don't move to value addition, you find your people are very busy in this economic activity, but in terms of its contribution to the national revenue, it's still very low. And that is an area that I hope and I know the Committee on Agriculture is really focused on. How do we improve? How do we value add? Why is it that across the world, a lot of the products on the shelves have a huge Kenyan component, whether it is our tea, whether it is our coffee, but locally, we are getting very little out of it. And so that's a discussion we must have as a country. We must have the discussion of how to add value to a lot of our crops. Look at avocados, look at bananas, look at maize. In the part of the country where I'm from, of course I'm from Nairobi, but where I trace ancestry, the biggest cause of poverty is sugarcane and maize, Mr. Speaker. And so we keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Yet at this point, and the reason why we are focused on some of those crops is because that is where the Mzungu left us. Today, if you go to Mumias or Kakamega, and you bring in a packet of sugar from Brazil, from the factory there, to the shipping, to the tax that is paid, to transport it from Mombasa, it will be cheaper than the sugar from that Mumias where you are. People have been afraid to discuss the real problems in agriculture. Because the real problems can only be discussed when we decide, let's put the politics aside, let's address the real issue. Why is it not doing well? Is that the best crop to be grown in that area? Is this the best crop to be grown in a specific area? Today, if you go to Kitale, many of our farmers, including myself, have moving away from maize. We're looking at other crops that actually are doing much better, are giving better yields, instead of waiting for 1 year to go and line up your trucks at the cereals and produce board and get nothing. Now maize is being bought, I think, 2,300, So some radical questions must be asked and answered on this agricultural sector. And that is why I initially, I started saying that Senator Wambua knows why this specific crop is important for the area that he represents, because that is what can work, Mr. Speaker, in that area. So these discussions must be held. People are now moving to other crops, adding value. We have sunflower in Bungoma, but the farmers there are extremely poor, yet we're importing sunflower oil. And if you develop sunflower in Bungoma and part of Kitale, you have a captive market all the way to Turkana and South Sudan, to Uganda, to actually produce oil. And the byproduct of that production of oil is soap. So we want to see factories there, and we need to talk about how then we add value to that crop, and it can transform the economy of Western region, for instance. If we look at what can be done better in coast, can transform the economy and turn it on its head. But look at what happened to Galana Kulalo. So these are questions that we really must ask and really need to answer if we want to transform our economy and forget these high-level theories that I hear people banding around of how to change the economy and how to change the livelihoods of the common person in this country. Mr. Speaker, the second thing that impresses me in this bill is nuanced. It is the issue of school feeding. And I want to thank Senator Wambua. I spoke about this yesterday. Mr. Speaker, if you go to many of our schools, and I've gone now, since schools opened in Nairobi, I've visited now around 8 schools. And you look at those children, you'll want to shed a tear. Because they're trying to keep brave faces, but they're hungry. At home, there's nothing. The COVID pandemic has had a very, very bad effect on the economy. So the parents are really broke. We used to have a school feeding program. When I was growing up in Nairobi, we used to have maziwa ya nyayo. We'd get milk, in school, which would add the nutrition. And that's why, even as you remember, the first anniversary of the late President Moi, he left a mark. But something we must add, apart, we're giving MCS 4 billion for BBI, yet with a similar amount, we can actually feed all our children in schools while helping the economy, Mr. Speaker, because it's the farmers who are growing these things. So such that the government now buys rice, buys this ndengu, buys maize, and makes sure in school a child at least will get a meal. I don't know how Senator Milgo, when I raised it yesterday, what you have thought about, because it's your committee. We must reintroduce it. In the urban areas in Nairobi, Nairobi is what we call shamba la mawe. When you don't have money, you will not eat and you will not sleep, because everything you have to pay for. At least for some of you in the rural areas, you know, there's something, even if you pluck off the fence, it is mboga, you know, the hedges, the hedges are edible. Your neighbor will give you what you call a gorogoro of maize. But the children in Nairobi and in the urban areas are really suffering. So I think while you've put this here, we must emphasize that aspect of school feeding by government being able to buy this produce from our farmers. I don't think there'll be a better way to allocate, whether it is 5 billion or 10 billion, Mr. Speaker, for our children. Because if a child has nothing in their stomach, nothing will go into their head. Nothing will go into their brains, you know. We've started, you know, together with private sector, some of the Rotary clubs where Mutula made me join. Some of these people are helping me take food to some schools, but it's not sustainable. As a senator, I can't feed all the kids in Nairobi. So I'd really urge, and I'm glad the leader of majority is here, please, even as we're going through the BPS and this budget program, as a Senate, please let us think about the issue of feeding our children in schools. I think there's no better thing that you can be able to do. So thank you also, Senator Wambua, for raising that issue of school feeding within this bill. It talks about how to facilitate access to the markets, which is extremely important. Mr. Speaker, when we were having our debate last year and people were saying there's no agriculture in Nairobi, I told them part of agriculture is the market. And the biggest market for a lot of our agricultural products, whether it is livestock, is Nairobi. If you look at Kiamaiko, if you look at Dagoretti Corner, all of those abattoirs, it is your livestock that come there. If you look at Marigiti, if you look at Wakulima Market, it is the market. Now, if agriculture is 60% of the GDP, yet every year we're having 30 to 40% post-harvest losses, then really we're you know, putting money in a hole. We must look at storage. We must look at access to markets. We must look at extension officers and the contribution in the end, you know, of the value chain, and that is the markets. So that is something which is extremely important, and I'm very happy that Senator Wambua has raised it in this bill. We need to strengthen the capacity of communities. Back in the day, there used to be a lot of agricultural extension officers. I don't know if they're still there as much as they were before. You know, the agricultural extension officers would come and tell you, you know, they'll test your soil, and they say, with this kind of soil, this is what you need to do. They'll be able to see whether the outbreaks of diseases, you know, that needs to be re-emphasized. And that can only be done by giving counties money, because agriculture is essentially a devolved function. And so the growers must be assisted on post-harvesting management of mung-bean products and also other crops that we have, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I move to finalize, because I want to say that I fully support this bill, I'd like to encourage members to really pay attention to this sector of agriculture. And let us make it, again, interesting for our young people to get into. Because young people have thought that agriculture is a dirty thing, that agriculture is not cool, but it's the coolest thing you can do. Before I got into agriculture myself, you know, I thought, now what would I be doing, trying to kulima shamba and all of that, Mr. Speaker, in quotes. But the income that comes out of it, the results, and just the magic of putting something in the ground and something coming out, you know, it is what God has given us. And that's why today I'm very proud, as a farmer as well, on top of whatever else I do, I'm very proud that young people are getting into agriculture. Let's encourage them to get more into it. And not just think of you know, boda boda, or what Millicent Omanga wants to give them all wheelbarrows. Let them try and engage meaningfully in actually making something out of tilling the land. Mr. Speaker, I pray that this bill is fast-tracked in the National Assembly so that it can become law. And Senator Wambua will have a bill to his name. It's a very proud moment when you start a legislation from scratch, It goes through the two houses and it is assented to. You will not be forgotten. And I'm proud of the kind of bills that are coming. Look at what Senator Aaron Cheriot did with tea. You know, even though somebody might have tried to trivialize that as well, it has already, you know, the market already is responding well to that legislation that has been passed by this house. So hongera sana Senator Wambua, you can count on our full support. We don't grow much mung beans in Nairobi, but we're also thinking a lot of urban agriculture. We eat a lot of it. We're the biggest consumers of mung beans. So we are huge stakeholders. But again, I will debunk that myth that there's a lot of agriculture in Nairobi. You know, if you go to some like Dagoretti South, you know, if you go to Waithaka, if you go to Mutuini, there's a lot of agriculture. If you go to Njiru, we were talking about Njiru just now, in Kasarani constituency. If you go to parts of Roysambu, there's a lot of agriculture. And I like to encourage my farmers in Nairobi as well, not just the consumers, but also the farmers, to really, and there's a lot of innovation. Even in some of the areas without space, there's agriculture being done in guinea bags, you know, that is very modern urban agriculture. So we are stakeholders, and thank you for bringing this. I hope next you'll also bring one on the mangoes and the value addition, because, you know, in Ukambani, that is something that, you know, can really change the economy. They grow very naturally there, but we're not seeing a lot of production and packaging, commercial, of juice, you know, and the other byproducts that come from those crops. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Senator Wambua.
Senator Njeru Ndwiga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first I want to congratulate Senator Wambua for sponsoring this bill. Speaker, as Senator Wambua is the Vice Chair of Agriculture Committee, even before he had moved this bill. And the committee did undertake public participation. And we went to Kitui to do public participation. Mr. Speaker, I would like to inform this House that the enthusiasm that we saw in Kitui when we were doing that public participation, the women, even young farmers in Kitui, the enthusiasm is overwhelming. I still remember that day nostalgically when we had that meeting with the farmers of Kitui on this bill. Mr. Speaker, I want to also join the other speakers who are supporting this bill and the reasons that they have given thereof. Mr. Speaker, this continent called Africa will never get off its feet if we keep thinking in the last century. Mr. Speaker, it is time we woke up as a continent. First of all, okay, we wake up from Kitui with the mung beans and other places. But as a continent, we must wake up. It is time we woke up. Mr. Speaker, we were established by our former masters, the colonialists, as people who produce for them. But we have forgotten, Mr. Speaker, that if we think outside the box, we could even be better exporters. I want to invite this House, Mr. Speaker, to an episode where the Prime Minister of India visited this country. And it was agreed that we will produce mung beans and export to India. It was one of the mikatapas which were assigned at that time. Do you know, Mr. Speaker, when they went back to India, instead of importing our mung beans, they mobilized their farmers to produce mung beans. Therefore, they mobilized their own farmers to produce mung beans. So that now all the mung beans we are producing in this country had no market. Mr. Speaker, tumerogwa na nani? Now, who as a country, and I apologize, Mr. Speaker, that's an parliamentary, so I withdraw. First, I cannot mix languages. Mr. Speaker, as a country, It is time we started thinking outside the box. Now, if we are producing whatever we are producing, can we, and we have such educated scientists and food technologists in this country, we should not just be going to the farm to just put things in the soil, wait for them to sprout, and then wonder what we are going to do with them. As if we did not go, they know they will grow. Mr. Speaker, it is time we started to think about this thing called value addition. Nobody, in fact, it is crazy today. The whole world waits for Africa to produce raw material and send raw material to them. Raw material to them to do other things and to improve on what we have sent, and then they re-export it. They re-export it back to Africa for consumption. Mr. Speaker, that is crazy. If we, if we are doing the same things and we expect, we're talking about poverty in Africa, if we are doing the same things, how can we get different results? How can we get different results? We are going to continue in this, in perpetual poverty, unless we change our mindset. And our mindset, Mr. Speaker, is first of all, we have got to change our political thinking. The way as politicians we behave is as if the country does not belong to us. We go out and make beautiful statements. But Mr. Speaker, who is telling our young people today that you can go out there and grow mung beans and grow the other things which we value add here, which we will consume here? Mr. Speaker, Senator Sakaja just talked about sunflower. Today, even feeding our own cows here so that they can produce milk, they can produce milk, we have to import ingredients which include that sunflower cake from Uganda. Are we crazy? Mr. Speaker, what is happening to us? Mr. Speaker, I quite agree that this country, we cannot just be talking about us being an agricultural country, yes, and doing nothing about investing in that agriculture. In fact, Mr. Speaker, today, we had a session, my committee had a session with the Council of Governors in Mombasa to discuss issues agriculture. I'll tell you, Mr. Speaker, we, for all of them, and we're asking, what percentage of your money do you invest in agriculture? Mr. Speaker, if they are not paying NHIF, what do you think is going to agriculture? Mr. Speaker, we need to be focused as a country. As a country, we need to be focused. Just look at what is happening in the other sectors. Look at the coffee sector. Look at the tea sector. We just passed the TBO here the other day. Well, Mr. Speaker, you've looked at the other countries who are tea producers. It is true. India, they will be the biggest producers, but they consume most of it. Now, Sri Lanka, in the neighborhood there, they are big producers, but they do not export their tea in raw form. We have got to wake up and start and move into the direction of value addition. In fact, I'm challenging government that whatever you have, whatever we have as a country today to improve in agriculture, let's go into value addition. And this country is waiting, the world is waiting. Mr. Speaker, I'm a big supporter of African FTA. Because, Mr. Speaker, even without thinking about what we are going to feed Muzungus, this Africa here, very many corners of East Africa here, we can send mung beans there to very many places inside Africa. But we do not think about cross-border trade, about our own trade. If we traded amongst ourselves here, we will begin to get respected by everybody else in the world. But, Mr. Speaker, we don't do that because we think that the only place is Europe or in Asia. Mr. Speaker, I support that the mung bean bill I support, and I have already supported as chair of Agriculture Committee. And Mr. Speaker, even where we say that some of this agriculture is subsistence farming, Mr. Speaker, when you have a farmer in Kitui, or that peasant in Kitui, who has produced 5 bags of mung bean, are they going to eat 5 beans of mung bean? No. So that's the thing of subsistence farming. I think that concept and thinking should change in our mindset. Mr. Speaker, we must begin to think that agriculture is business. And we must begin to imagine or to design ways to introduce our children and the young people in this country to agriculture. But for us to do that, we must make it interesting and we must make it pay. Because, Mr. Speaker, I believe and I know agriculture pays. I've been a farmer myself since I was a young fellow, and I'm still a farmer. But I know, and I do know, that agriculture pays. But we've got to be focused. This country, just go to Kabete, that veterinary where we train agriculturalists. We have, just listen to them. Just listen to the ideas that ooze out of their mouths. Beautiful ideas, Mr. Speaker, beautiful. We have such educated agriculturalists in this country. But what are we doing with all this, Mr. Speaker? It is time we change our focus. Stop thinking about producing just for consumption year to happen. And even if it was just ours, even if it was our own consumption, Mr. Speaker, let us be creative. Let us value and so that we get more value for whatever we produce. Mr. Speaker, I support, although I do not want to discuss the coffee bill before it runs here, but I have seen a line there which says that we will increase duty and taxes for all coffees that will come back into this country. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I support. But I also want to suggest that we zero rate all coffees which will get into this country, or raw coffee which will get into this country, so that we can start a process of being coffee manufacturers for the world. That's what we need to do. The days when that coffee had money, Mr. Speaker, Coffee Board of the day used to produce our coffee in industrial area here. And all of us, we know Kahawa #1, KK Kahawa, those things. We know, but I don't want to get there. I know we'll be getting to a coffee bill soon. Today we are on mung bean and agriculture. This is what we must support. And I think, and I believe very, very strongly that we must move into areas of value addition. Why? Let us get rice from Mombasa. Let us just look at the nutrients of the mung bean. Let's go and Google if you don't know. Look at the nutrients, right? There's nothing you need for school feeding. When the Sagana, you go to Moya, to Moya, go and get the rice from those peasant farmers there, and the Kitui and all those other places which produce mung bean. Yes, school feeding program. Young fellows, our students, instead of giving them complicated foods, young mung bean and mchere mix up, very nutritious food, absolutely nutritious, Mr. Speaker. So, and then we'll have very nutritious food. That is the direction we should go. And the moment we go there, perhaps then somebody else, some neighboring country might say, that thing that you are giving your children there, please send it over to us. Because then it will be a package, to be a brand, to be a brand. It will not be just mung bean. It will not just be basmati rice. It will be a brand. And that will create employment for our people. Mr. Speaker, I know many of my colleagues would like to contribute to this bill. I supported, I urge all of us to really support. And Mr. Speaker, in my own country also, is a producer of mung beans. Yes, that is why I support Senator Wambua's initiative, and I salute Senator Wambua's initiative. This is the direction to go. This is how you think about your people. Yeah, but think about your people now. You have hata watu wangu across the river. You you have enriched what they do. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I beg to support.
Senator Masita Chionga.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand here to congratulate Senator Wambua for coming up with this bill on the Mang bill. And I want to say that looking at the bill is of great benefit to Kenyans. And not only Kenyan, but to improve the agriculture sector, which Kenyans really depended on since initiation of this republic. Mr. Speaker, there are so many challenges when it comes to agriculture in this country. And this bill here is trying or has tried to sort out some of the challenges that generally affect our agricultural sector. Mr. Speaker, when you look at the issue of regulations that have been highlighted here, when you look at the responsibilities, when you look at the licenses, the permits and regulations as a whole, you find out that the bill has really highlighted how we should go about. But my worry is, how do we then deal with the middleman who can then come up in this agricultural sector and the so-called the brokers, who take over what the poor farmer has come up with and convert it to their own production. It is important that we follow what has been put into this bill, especially the regulations that have been laid here and the policies that have been highlighted here when dealing with licensing. There are so many issues here, Mr. Speaker. When you look at licensing in Kenya as a whole, the brokers really killed this sector. And you find out that many of the people adopt these licenses, go out there and maybe rent out huge farms and come out, rebrand the same crops that we are trying to protect in this republic, like the one that we are talking about, the Mang bill, and they come up, rebrand the same, and sell them to our own people. So I like the issue whereby the regulations that have been put into this particular bill that will tame some of these people, especially the brokers. It will tame them. If only the national government and the county government will embrace what is put into this bill. The other thing I want to say, it is about the policies. We come up with policies. We came up with policies on how to regulate our irrigations, our farmers, how they can adopt on the irrigation and how they can limit themselves to policies that can actually be acceptable to our own farmers. But you find out that when it comes, it is only in books and in bills and in acts. But it does not occur very well when it comes to practicals. There are people who take agriculture for granted in this country. And when they take agriculture for granted, they kill our economy. You look at the maize farmers, you look at the sugarcane farmers, we are crying foul, especially in the Western. We do not want the same to happen in Ukambani, where these people, the same people, they will now navigate their ways to this, using this bill, they will navigate their ways to this part of the country and bring down these particular farmers. We want to encourage our farmers to follow regulation. We want to encourage our government to follow standards and operation. And that's why I also like one thing in this particular bill, whereby the minister does not be the main person to control agricultural sector, or the county government then remains the only one to be controlled with one person. It is all the stakeholders to be put on the table, discuss, and look at the cartels that are in this particular, the cartels that really infringe in this particular sector, and limit them so that our people can benefit from this particular protection. Again, Mr. Speaker, it is that you look at this particular bill, the school feeding program. It is not only the school feeding program. You find out that these people, the cartels that I'm talking about, they will get the tenders. They will want to pretend that they're the ones who have produced. They export this particular produce to the other countries and rebrand them and bring them back to Kenya. So the regulation should not only remain in books, should not only remain in policies, should not only remain in acts, but go practical on the ground. And the monitoring that the bill is talking about, it should be real time, so that when you monitor this particular establishment, it is where we can tame some of the shortcuts that are taken by the brokers, and the farmers then benefit from what we are trying to provide or what we are trying to come up with. Otherwise, I like the bill. I want to congratulate my colleague here that we have some of the people who admire these ndengus or the mang bill from Ukambani, but with the technology that will be established here or has been established here, we shall be able to make it even further, go to just beyond the semi-arid areas, but even go to arid areas, because if the same technologies that have been talked here can be embraced by Israel, if you go to Israel, it's a total desert. But they have changed the whole thing into a place where you can think there is rain throughout the year. So let us embrace this bill, let us contribute towards it, and let us tell Kenyans that we have life, and we can actually make laws that can be adopted by Kenyans and can be adopted by these two houses and can help Kenyans just to produce and make use of what they have produced. And Mr. Speaker, it is important that the legislative that we are putting into place here, if it is adopted even in the other house, let it move very fast so that we can adopt it and we make these farmers feel that they actually own what is their own. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kangata.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this Man's Bill 2020. I start by congratulating the Senator for Kitui for coming up with this very progressive bill for several reasons. Most importantly, that it's an agricultural bill, and we all know agriculture is the most important sector in Kenya in terms of its contribution to the GDP, in terms of its employment. It employs the bulk of Kenyan population. In terms of providing food security, Mr. Speaker, sir, in a world which is becoming more and more integrated, we are opening up barriers of trade. Countries must take advantage of what we call comparative advantage. And Kenya, Mr. Speaker, its major comparative advantage vis-a-vis other countries is its agricultural potential. Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the huge contribution of agriculture to the Kenyan economy, the investment by the government is never commensurate. You find that we invest more in things like infrastructure, which is positive. We invest in security, but rarely do we get commensurate investments in agriculture. And therefore, this is the move to the right direction. So let me start with the merits of this bill. Mr. Speaker, one merit of this bill is that it brings Mang's bill to the center of government agenda on matters agriculture. Mr. Speaker, for the longest time, when we talk of agriculture in this country, concentration has been in coffee, in tea, in milk, And I think it is high time we also diversify in other areas that can can boost agriculture. And I agree with the Mangs bill now that it will get recognition. This bill will compel AFA to take into account matters Mangs beans. To me, that is important. I foresee a situation where the minister concerned with agriculture at the national level now being compelled to market externally Mangs bill, now being compelled to put out standards for Mangs bill, and that way you will find these beans becoming more and more marketable and more grown in Kenya and protecting the farmer. Another major advantage concerning this bill, Mr. Speaker, is that at proposed Section 4, it confers certain duties to Agriculture and Food Authority. Further, at Section 5, it confers further duties on County Executive Committee, so that you have a situation where the national government is doing intervention for the growing up of this bean. Also, there is some role also given to the county government to promote the marketing of this. I'm also happy, Mr. Speaker, sir, with the proposal in proposed Section 6, which now compels the various government entities to give priority in products of Mang beans in government programs. Mr. Speaker, government usually have several programs. Let's say, for instance, the food relief. But when you look at the products that are used by government in food relief, you'll see more emphasis in beans, in maize, in rice. But I've never seen I'm not aware of a certain time where government distributed Mang bean. Just for the people who are watching out there, people want to know what is Mang bean. Mang bean is dengue. So allow me to use the term dengue for the purpose of the common mwananchi to understand. So really, have we ever seen government distributing dengue to the wananchi? So if this law passes, you will see government purchasing dengue, taking out dengue to the wananchi, and therefore the prices will go up. We all know the importance of government in this economy. This is an economy that revolves around the government in terms of a huge allocation to the government, a huge government budget. So when government purchases dengue, then government distributes that dengue. Two things happen. Number one, the producer price will go up. You'll find farmers in Kitui and also in Murang'a. We have a huge region that has potentiality to grow dengue. The entire region stretching from Thika town to the entire Kakuzi region in Lower Gatanga, Idhanga ward, the entire Kimorori Wempa in that region called Maragua, the entire region called Makuyu in Maragua also, Kambiti, also location 20 in Kiharu, also parts of Gaturi in Kiharu, also parts of Lower Kandara. So all that region, I have no doubt, once government starts purchasing dengue, you will see now more farmers planting dengue. And now also on the demand side, because now that's an intervention on the supply side. On the demand side, you will find now people starting to consume more dengues in their homes. Currently, when people usually purchase beans, when they want to make their stew, they purchase what we call minji. But now with dengue now getting more recognition via this law, I suspect the prices of dengue will go up, and that to me is positive. Mr. Speaker, I strongly believe the future of this country is somehow interconnected with the prospects of the so-called dry regions. Why? Because those dry regions have virgin lands. Those dry regions are waiting for irrigation. Once irrigation comes, you'll find food security will be embedded in this country. And therefore, dengue being a crop that can withstand harsh climatic conditions, it needs a lot of support. It's a crop in the so-called dry belt, and therefore I support the philosophy underpinning this bill. But Mr. Speaker, let me now point out areas of improvement which my colleague who has brought this bill can consider. Number one, part 3 and maybe part 4 of this bill. The so-called the regulatory provisions. The regulatory provisions. You see, the reason why you find countries like America prospering is because they have very light regulations. Every time you bring regulation in a country, you tend to stifle development of industries. So therefore, I'm trying to convince my brother, every time you hear a regulation, you must always look at it from a negative point of view. It is something that is going to be enacted by government, whose net effect, notwithstanding the original intention to assist that sector, regulations tend to whittle down economy. They tend to bring back, they tend to hold back. So the less regulated a sector is, the better it is. So for instance, you find here requirements for registration of growers. You find a requirement for licensing of marketers, processors, large scale. Refusal to issue a license. To me, that's a danger. Those are dangerous provisions from where I sit. They will tend now to create a parallel black market. It will mean a poor person in Kitui, he cannot even establish a small shamba of dengue without going to pay a license. That license, number one, will be expensive. I have no doubt government will put some fee for obtaining that license. Number two, it will be laborious to even procure that license. It will take 1 or 2 years, or you have to corrupt that official. Yeah? So you may say, okay, no, it is important you give out those licenses so that you standardized. But I'm telling you, based on my experience with government regulations, they always retard industries. Let me give you an example, my brother. Let me give you a good example. If you want to establish a hotel here in Nairobi or anywhere in this republic, how many licenses are you supposed to get from government? Almost 100. You have to pay, I don't know, you go to National Construction Authority, you get it. You go to environmental, what is it called? National Environmental Management Authority, another license. You go to public health, another license. You go to the county, the authority, the local authority or the county government, another license. You go to the engineers, to the builders, another license. You go to alcohol, another license. Surely. I can tell you. By the way, Mr. Speaker, I want you to bring it to attention. There's a very good write-up by a very good scholar. I think he's from Latin America. He's called De Soto. You see, De Soto has argued very persuasively that governments, how they retard economic growth in third world countries by coming up with taxes and laborious processes. Ask any person wanting to put out a factory in this country how many licenses is supposed to put up. And I can tell you, the funny thing is, they will tell you, hey, we are telling you to obtain this license. Let's say, for instance, NEMA, so that we protect the environment. The truth is, there will be no single NEMA officer who will come up to your premises. You just go to the office, you give them something, then they give you a document. No single person will come there to do anything. So in short, every time I see a regulation, my blood runs cold. Let me tell you, every time I see a law proposing a regulation, for me, my blood runs cold. And that is why I'm a great opponent for any forms of regulation in this country. These regulations are going to retard this sector. You may say, okay, you're bringing them in good faith. You want to bring standards, but I can tell you those licenses will be conduits for corruption. Let us make this sector lightly regulated. we make it lightly regulated. In fact, by the way, the other time I was thinking about philosophy of regulations in Kenya. Do you know what I was proposing to do? You say, you provide that.
What is Senator Pareno?
Mr. Speaker, I happen to sit in the Delegated Legislation Committee. And we do a lot of regulations, which most of the times are to operationalize the acts that, the parent acts and the very many bills that come along from both houses. And I would not want to say that all the regulations are actually bad. From what my learned colleague and senator colleague is talking about, he seems to have a problem with regulations. And I want to say that sitting from where I sit as a member of the Delegated Legislation Committee, not all regulations are bad. All we need to check out is whether they are harmful in a way. And by the time you actually come out to do a regulation, there is public participation from all the stakeholders to iron out the interest of both the executive and the interest of the farmers. The last regulations that we did that were the best example of the regulations that the ministries had done were regulations from the coffee sector. And to us, we felt that they were, and I remember him attending to the public, to the very hearing or the consideration of those regulations. The senator himself actually came in and he made contributions. And as a committee, we were satisfied that those regulations actually came out to help the farmer to regulate the industry so that they are not exploited. I give an example of the regulations that come up to now design the packaging of some of our produce. You know the potato, the tomato, the capsicum, and the kind of, I'm just giving information as to what we are doing. And they came out with packaging so that the farmer is not exploited. So in short, I am simply giving information sitting from the Delegated Legislation Committee that not all regulations are bad.
Senator Pareno, you stood on a point of information, right?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Point of order. Okay. Proceed, Senator Kangata.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Allow me, but please don't into my time. That's the reason. But the point is, okay, noted, and I'm happy, Wakili, for your information. I am very grateful, but for me, from where I sit, I'm a strong opponent of overregulation of any society. By the way, let me tell you one thing, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Order,
Mr.
Senators.
Speaker, sir.
Yeah.
All regulations...
Proceed and address the chair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, sir, all regulations in this country, they always come under the guise of helping the society. All of them, by the way. They always be framed in a manner that, hey, we are going to protect noise, hey, we are going to protect environment, hey, we are going to set good standards, all of them. But what they do, the net effect is to whittle down that specific sector. I've given you an example of a hotel. Which hotel, by the way, will offer employment to young people, will give certain services to that sector? Same way with these regulations which are being proposed by this bill. They are well intended, I agree. Maybe you want to set standards. But the net effect will be to create structures of corruption, to ensure that people cannot freely trade. For me, with all due respect, I'm trying to convince to you, consider recasting some of these provisions here. Don't give a requirement for people, for growers to be registered. Don't. Let anyone who wants to plant dengue, plant. Freedom, my brother, freedom. There's nothing as important as freedom in this country. Freedom, look here. Look here, we have been fighting for freedom of expression, freedom of movement. Why can't we have freedom to trade? Yeah, freedom to trade, yeah, freedom. You see, look here. No, I'm serious. People have been fighting for all forms of freedom in this world. The freedom of
of expression, the freedom of movement, but what about freedom of trade? Look here, I have a shamba in Muranga or Kitui. I want to plant dengu. Why should I seek a license? Surely. Why should I seek a license? Surely, for God's sake. Yeah, look here. Why should I be registered by anyone? I don't want to be registered. Yeah. No, look at proposed section 8, proposed and 9. Yeah, it says requirements of licensing of marketers, processors, I don't know, large-scale traders. Give freedom. Freedom. Anyone who wants to market the effect, please come to my place and register. That's my view. That's my view. Look, I look at proposed section 11. It says refusal to issue a license, meaning, okay, an officer can misuse his power. He wants money. He wants corruption. What do? You give out money. For me, how do I say? They give some form of a license. Very few they do it bona fide. Vast majority of them they act malafide. And therefore, for me, make this industry less regulated. Make this industry less regulated. Regulations does not assist a sector. Regulations tends to return a sector. That's my view. That is my strong view. In fact, my final remark is this one. I would propose we even create what we call guaranteed minimum return for farmers' produce. I would support that one. In India, you can see farmers are currently on strike demanding guaranteed minimum return to be retained there. In a place like US, in Europe, by the way, farmers usually get some form of guarantee from their governments. They get some form of guarantee. I wish you are saying, as the government of Kitui, or Muranga County government, we are going to give some form of guarantee to our farmers. Whatever produce they come, we give them certain incentives. Either we support their inputs, either we support their prices. You come up with what we call a stabilization scheme. When prices are down, they get some support from that fund. When prices are up, certain amount goes to that fund so that you guarantee prices stabilization for dengu. That would make a lot of sense. Because, by the way, ask any farmer, what disincentivizes farmers in this country is the problem of prices. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm aware in Kitui, by the way, there was an attempt by your governor to make some intervention in this area of dengu. I know you may be having a little bit of differences with her, but please look at that issue. Yeah, yes, I agree. No, I'm trying to argue, look at the issue from an objective point of view, that the reason why I suspect that scheme failed is the issue of there was overproduction and then there was no market. Yeah, you see, I would imagine, I don't know, I'm trying to imagine. So, what is the solution to that issue? The solution is guarantee farmers that when I plant my dengu today, tomorrow I know the price, and that price will not go down. It happens in Europe, it happens in America. I don't know why that can't happen in this country. So that you find the support is at the input level, at the input level. Then you allow market forces now to work at the output level. That makes a lot of sense. But now when you now at the output level or at the input level, you are saying, hey, get this license X, get license Y, that's a little bit of dangerous. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm a firm believer in conservative policies. Yeah, if I was an American, I'd be voting Republican. We believe in free trade. We believe in forces of market. I believe societies move forward when you allow forces of market to operate freely. Regulations only whittle down economic prosperity. Thank you.
Senator Dr. Alice Milko.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this chance to contribute to this bill. And first of all, let me thank the Senator for Kitui, Senator Wambua, for bringing such a wonderful bill to this House. Actually, this is, has opened up our minds. I wondered first what mang was until yesterday when he said mang is another name for dengue. Actually, with this bill, it shows that each and every crop should in this case have a policy so that all crops are actually given the importance they deserve. As I looked at this bill, I was even thinking around issues of millet. Millet is a crop that has been neglected for a long time, but then millet is a crop that has got a lot of iron. Normally we take people to hospitals, we are told they have run short of blood, but then if they were eating food that, locally mixed with millet, they would reduce the requirement of such nutrients. Mr. Speaker, sir, I did realize that mang beans grows in arid and semi-arid areas, and for a long time, we have regarded many areas in our country as being of no use, and in this case, from this is an eye-opener to show that every area in our country is actually very useful. And for this particular case, we can, if once this bill goes through, we do realize that these mang beans may not only be grown in Kitui, it can also be grown right across the country in those areas that have got favorable weather conditions. Mang beans are very nutritious. Actually, we've been buying a lot of it from supermarkets, and furthermore, it is a source of great proteins. It is a source of income for the people. It is also going to play an important role as a food, as a cure crop, because it can be stored for a long time. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is quite unfortunate that normally we regard Kenya as a leading country in the region, yet in this case, we find ourselves at times going out to import maize, beans, and even other crops from Rwanda, from our neighboring countries, Rwanda, Tanzania, and even Uganda. And in this case, we have left a lot of our crops that, in this case, could become, would make our country become food secure. We've also been speaking to our youth. The 70% of our youth that do not have employment can be engaged in agricultural business through growing such crops as mang beans, and in this case, would be able to reduce even our youths from engaging in wrong behaviors. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support this bill because of the fact that it is specifying roles that have got to be played by the county as well as national government, and it is, I think, issues of mang bill will go a long way to be managed in a more effective manner. I look at Section 4 of that bill, Part 2.4, that is actually encouraging county governments and the national government to establish systems to coordinate and monitor the implementation of national standards and policies to actually manage the production of mang beans. In this case, issues of technology, Mr. Speaker, issues of research will go a long way to help farmers, in this case, to choose the right crops, choose the right technology to enhance their production. I think for a long time, farmers have been frustrated because of the fact that they have been using the same instrument, the same seeds, and expecting different results. Mr. Speaker, sir, this bill has gone a long way to provide even for how farmers can be able to get to acquire loans to improve their farming methods. And I think for a long time, most of our farmers do not even know that they can be able to access loans to actually improve their agricultural produce. But this bill has gone a long way to actually ensure that farmers can be encouraged to obtain loans. There are also provision for agricultural extension services. Mr. Speaker, sir, extension services plays a very important role, particularly in training farmers on the best methods of farming, on the best fertilizers to use, the best seeds, and even the time to plant the crop. And I think with this extension officers, the mang pins will go a long way to improve. In addition to that one, this bill has provided for encouraging the collection of data so that we know how many farmers are growing these beans, how much was a crop produced. I think data in this case, Mr. Speaker, does not lie. What I was drawn to the attention, the Senator for Kitui was attracted by the fact that one of the constituencies in 2010 was able to produce 680,000 tons of mang pills. And in a short while, 2014, the tonnage had gone up to 1.2 million tons, Mr. Speaker. The only frustration was that these same beans were only bought for Kenya shillings 20 per kilo, and after these middlemen would travel for just a few kilometers and they would sell for 250 shillings. This is indeed a very frustrating scenario, Mr. Speaker, but I'm sure with this bill, these farmers will be saved from this middlemen that has for a long time actually should change farmers. I think one very important issue, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of value addition. I think mang beans can have value addition so that actually it can attract even a better price. For a long time, tea, Mr. Speaker, has been sold in our country as raw materials to other countries. And once they have been used to blend tea from other countries, they lose its identity. We will no longer be able to identify it so that it is our tea. What they become is that they become American tea, UK tea, or even whichever country tea, and therefore our farmers ends up losing that. I think just recently we passed the warehouse bill, and I think with warehouses right across the counties, this can be also used to store these particular crops, and there could be, in this case, Mr. Speaker, exchanges right across the counties. There are those counties that grow potatoes, others grow bananas, others may be growing millet, and even others, therefore, like this case, Kitui, growing a lot of mang beans. If these crops can be stored during dry seasons, these can be exchanged right across the counties in terms of trading. Mr. Speaker, sir, Section 6 of this bill also speaks to issues of prioritization of the mang beans in terms of a government feeding program. Mr. Speaker, sir, my committee has been trying to actually establish how ECD kids can be fed. And we spoke to several governors right across the country. And one of the governors we spoke to was the governor for Kitui County, who told us that she could not manage to feed the kids because there was no food. That our county actually relies on relief food. And this, it is now that I'm discovering. I think next time I meet the governor for Kitui, I'll tell her there's a lot of mang beans in our county, and she should initiate feeding programs. She refused completely that feeding cannot be initiated in Kitui County because of lack of food. Mr. Speaker, sir, in a short while, we shall be holding a conference to actually put together the ideas that we have been speaking to about ECD program. One out of this program, among others, was feeding program, so that we can, in this case, propose a feeding program right across the country. And in this case, I think during that time when we have the conference, we'll be able to invite Senator Wambua to actually speak to the issue of mang beans as one of the important crops that can be used, just because we have been suggesting bananas in other areas, we've been suggesting even potatoes in other areas, and in this case, porridge in those areas where they can afford to grow maize as well as millet. So for this particular case, mang beans are very nutritious, and these young kids at DCD centers are actually undergoing developmental and growth stage, which is very important for their intellectual growth in the future. So I think this is a very important bill that has come at the right time, and I support this bill because it's going to even assist my committee to propose a very important food. I remember during the Nyayo era, Nyayo proposed the supply of milk to school. During that time, there was a lot of milk in our country, Kenya. And once milk was supplied to schools, it played a very important role in providing market. And in addition to that one, it actually ensured that the developmental stages of our kids were ensured so that come the future, they would be very bright. So I think in the same way, mung beans can be treated in a similar manner. In terms of policy, I love the fact that this policy will actually be put in place upon this bill passing within 6 months, so that we don't have bills being passed and then they go to collect tasks. I am sure within 6 months, if this bill will pass, we shall have this policy in place, and therefore it will play a very important role in speaking to issues among peers. Our very major challenge only is policies that can stay for a long time without being reviewed. But then I've seen that you have provided under P, the review of the policy, at least once every 5 years. In fact, tea farmers have actually suffered because of policies that were put in place for a long time. The reason why we've been having a lot of wars in tea growing areas, we've even had some of the farmers uprooting their tea, is because policies that were put in place a long time have been used, and in this case, they are already obsolete, outdated, and our farmers have been exploited for a long time. So I think tea farmers can be able to borrow even from this and even other policies, so that we actually ensure that the policies are changed every often. In terms of regulation, I think we can be able to provide a provision. I've seen a fine of up to about 500 or imprisonment or both. I think we can also provide a provision where if they are middlemen, or if somebody is licensed and then they actually cause confusion, such a license can be cancelled, so that it can be one of the punitive, or rather of the regulations. And I think such people, I think such people can be able to conduct fair trade. Otherwise, once again, let me thank Senator Wambua for coming up with a very wonderful bill. I support this bill, and I'm sure I'll be coming up with a millet bill in a short while. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Bshiro,
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this bill. This bill is very close to my heart, not because my friend Senator Wambua is the one who has sponsored it, but because I relate to the history of it, but also because this bill is actually an SDG bill. This bill tackles poverty, it tackles zero hunger, it tackles good health and well-being, it tackles inequalities, it tackles so many SDGs. It's amazing that a bill that is just looking at one cereal can actually really tackle so many of the SDGs. It tackles poverty, it tackles hunger, it tackles health, it tackles so many things. But that said, I wanted to start from the beginning with the name of the bill. I don't know if it's too late, but I was wondering why we didn't call it just Dengue Bill. Mung is a word that we all have had to go into our dictionaries to find. And in terms of just language being dynamic, and language being something that perhaps is better used when you understand it better, and something that perhaps more descriptive and more relatable too, I don't know why we don't just call it Dengue Bill. So I don't know, Senator Wambua, why we have to go into language that perhaps is not used so much, but if there's any opportunity to just call it the Dengue Bill, and maybe the man can go in some brackets or something if it has to, but please consider, so that then as we go to our mothers and explain to them that, you know, how nutritious this is or how we should be supplementing the feeding for our children with that, we're not going to have to then go to something that really needs a dictionary translation. But that said, Mr. Speaker, 26% of our children in this country are stunted. The 26% of kids stunted mostly are in Eastern Province, Northeastern Province, and the Rift Valley. Mr. Speaker, I know this because I worked for the Red Cross for a very long time. I can relate to the shame of hunger more than anybody else, because I have scooped children that you can literally carry with one hand because they are wasting. Acute malnutrition or global acute malnutrition, GAM, that we called it, or it's called, wastes our children, wastes their brains, and we will have a generation of children that cannot think, below average in terms of the height, the weight, and we may have a population of this country that actually is going to have to need support as opposed to being productive members of society and you know, bringing socio-economic prosperity to our country. So I think this bill, as much as it may just look like something small, like has been said, something, you know, a cereal bill, is really a very important bill. I've sat here waiting to actually speak to it. I came back from somewhere. I've been having to go up and down. But if there's one thing we need to really be serious about, is the food security in this country. And when a country is food insecure, its future is in jeopardy. It's women, you know, whenever a child is hungry, the women have to complementary breastfeed for almost 24 hours. What then happens is that we have a child who is wasting, but we also have a mother who cannot bear other healthy children, and the vicious cycle continues. The shame of poverty, the shame of hunger, the shame of not being able to feed your child is borne mostly by the women, Mr. Speaker. And for me, this bill is so important, is so sacred, it's just the answer to what we need in this country as women and as children, where 26% of all our children under 5 years old are actually malnutrited and wasting away. Of course, disparities between counties is different. In parts of the country that are more affluent, it's 4%, but in counties like Isiolo and Northern Kenya and Eastern Province and Kitui, where Senator Wambua comes from, it's 14%. So again, you'll see just how dire the situation is, and I'm glad that he has also linked it to the school feeding program. That is a fantastic idea, and this is why our second president, President Moi, thought of the school feeding program, the Maziwa ya Nyayo, and this time, I think the Dengu ya Wambua will become a legacy that you'll be very proud of. So thank you very much, Senator Wambua. I know there's a few colleagues who are really wanting to speak to this. I don't want to speak too much to it, but just to say that for us in this country, 3.4 million people in 2017 had acute food insecurity, especially pastoralists like ourselves, because of the drought and the climate change that is ravaging our counties. I think the Ndengu bill is really an answer, is going to become a supplementary food for all of us, but even our animals could actually be introduced to the dengue. Why not? If in Mexico, the farmers are having their corn, eating it, feeding it to their animals and exporting it, it could be the answer to all our problems. And so I think this is a homegrown solution. It's an organic solution for our poverty issues, for our hunger issue, for our health and well-being issues. So I really want to support and to make sure that even as we go on, we make sure that it's, you know, the provisions within it are implemented. Again, I know there's a mention of basic or minimum returns. I don't believe in that. We should let market forces take care of things. Sometimes government doesn't have an answer to everything, and it's about time we realize that and let things be, and make sure that we support and put the right frameworks in place. And I think what is in this bill is sufficient, and we implement the provisions within it and make sure that we tackle a lot of these provisions, both in terms of our hunger issues, but also just looking forward to make sure that markets are also developed. Mr. Speaker, it also aligns very well with the Big Four agenda, and therefore, again, we don't have to wait to criticize the president for the Big Four agenda. People like Senator Wambua have already taken the first steps to ensure that the Big Four agenda is already being implemented. I don't want to keep going on and on with it, but I'd like to say I support and look forward to the implementation of the Dengue bill. I thank you.
Senator Olekina.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for giving me an opportunity to support this bill, which, as a person who suffers from hypertension because of the stress that we go through as politicians, this bill, in fact, when I did my research, I realized that the dengue can help lower your blood pressure. So I want to thank my colleague, Senator Ambua, for actually thinking about the nutrition value, thinking about all those children who suffer from really tough conditions. This product or this crop, once promoted in county governments, can also help be able to prevent a heat stroke. And it can also be able to help most of us politicians who are overweight be able to lose weight. Mr. Speaker, I've listened to the contribution by my colleagues, and I want to make my submissions quite brief, in the sense that when I read this bill, I did not only see a solution to local problems where we talk about food security, but I also was impressed by the fact that Senator Ambua is trying to put Kenya into the globe market of the producers of ndengu. When you look at the countries that produce ndengu, Kenya is not even in the list. In fact, in Africa, it's only Southern African countries that are in the list. If you look at North America, US and Canada, you look at Latin America, European, Asian Pacific, Korea, Middle East, and in fact, the in India, ndengu is produced out of all the world production of ndengu. India produces about 50%, and all that ndengu is consumed locally. China produces about 17%. It would be very, very good to be able to create an enabling environment to allow farmers to venture into this, into the production of ndengu. This is a product that grows into semi-arid areas, and with those global warming, every part of Kenya is now turning into a semi-arid area. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I see various ways in which my brother, Senator Ambua, can be able to improve this bill. You know, I was listening very keenly to the contribution which was being made by Senator Kangata. And although I agree with him, there are some parts that maybe he misread. When I look at the part that he referred to, he talked about anyone wanting to grow to register with the county governments. And you're not only registering with the county government so that you can be able to be charged a fee, but in my understanding of this bill, you're registering so that extension services can be able to reach out to you. You know, there's no way that people will know that you're growing this product, which now there's a bill to promote its production, if you do not let the county government know that you are also growing. The only part that I feel that I would like to request my colleague to change is when it comes to the issue of Part 3 regulations. When you look at Section 9, where it says a person shall not market, process, or carry out large-scale trading of mark beans or mark bean products unless the person has obtained a license from the relevant county executive committee member. Mr. Speaker, I think what I would like to beseech my colleague to change is on the aspect of marketing. You know, because marketing is what helps. When you produce all the product, if you are now reduced to registering with the county government, and if you fail to register, you are penalized with a heavy fee just because of marketing. There's no way that you're going to really encourage the production of this process. I agree with him that because of safety standards and international standards as well, that if you intend to add value, if you intend to process this commodity, you ought to register so that you can be given support by entities like KEFIS, which does a lot of research in production. They'll be able to help you. Because there are other issues that I hope that my colleague can also include in this bill to talk about either organic or GMO. When you look at the world, there's countries that promote GMO. There are countries that do not promote. In this country, I think we are slowly getting into this acceptance of GMO. So I think those are some of the areas that this regulation or the regulatory body should be looking at. What kind of seeds are you bringing into the country? Mr. Speaker, various colleagues talked about the challenges we have in this country when it comes to production or food security. It extends entirely, not only on human consumption, but also animal consumption. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, I was looking for, animal feeds to be able to feed my domestic animals, and I could not get them in Kenya. So I had to import them from Uganda. And because of recent elections in Uganda, they are quite expensive. So I'm also now exploring. So if Uganda is able to get into our market, to be able to sell soybeans, to be able to sell cotton, to be able to sell sunflower, then we also must be able to promote, since we have got a lot of land. And this is why, Mr. Speaker, I keep on insisting and said, land use policy must be enhanced in this country. In areas where you have big tracts of land, the local governments, given that agriculture is devolved, should actually continue encouraging or creating a very good environment that will encourage local farmers to venture into these products. People talk about regulations when it comes to cash crops. Maybe Senator Wambua is being futuristic and looking at this product not only being consumed in Kenya, but being sold out of the country in large volumes for it to help improve the standard of living of the people of Kenya, and particularly the people of semi-arid areas. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to belabor the point because most of my colleagues have actually elaborated on some of the points that I had, but I want to re-emphasize on the importance of these extension workers. Because if these county governments can be able to really put a lot of emphasis on this registration aspect to be able to map out, the areas that can grow this product and also be able to put in extension workers there and carry out these public participation or also awareness that if you grow mag beans in this area or ndengu in this particular area, there are 3 or 4 extension workers and you will get to know them in person. Those extension workers, Mr. Speaker, I would like to suggest to my colleagues, should also be registered with KEFIS so that they are up to date with the level of technology that is being used to enhance production. So I think this is a good attempt to help our local farmers. And I would like to maybe summarize by saying that I know my colleague, Senator Bishiro, had asked a question about the reason why we should call this a mango bean, a mang bean, and not calling ndengu beans. I think I would actually say, because you're not looking only at consuming this product locally, you should use a name that is recognized worldwide. And I think mang beans are known worldwide than ndengu. So you need to think how to solve local solution with a bigger market. The biggest problem we have in this country is that when we are producers of any crop, you limit yourself to the local market within you. We need to be thinking about how many other customers or how many other consumers of our goods are there. If we produce milk in Narrow County, we don't only have to look at Narrow County. Maybe in Narrow County we have 1.2 million people. And each and every day in our country, we produce over 300,000 liters of milk. For us to be able to progress well and to succeed, we have to think about the 4.4 million people who live in Nairobi, who consume this product. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill, and I congratulate my friend for thinking local, but also trying to get some international standards in the production of our local products. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Pareno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I thank Senator Wambua for coming up with this very important bill. Mr. Speaker, Senator Wambua's bill has spoken for all the farmers in this country because they suffer similar circumstances. We are now talking about overproduction of ndengu. To me, this is artificial overproduction, because if only we placed ndengu on the tables of each and every Kenyan, if only we knew how to market this ndengu, it would not be called an overproduction, Mr. Speaker. So this bill addresses lack of markets and lack of markets for each and every farmer. Mr. Speaker, our farmers have suffered with these cartels, with the brokers, and at the end of the day, they get nothing out of their farming activities. In fact, the brokers and the cartels get more than what the farmer is supposed to get. Mr. Speaker, our farmers have suffered fraudulent packaging, in fact, crude and immoral packaging of the produce. I talked earlier on, when I intervened, earlier on about the packaging of potatoes, the packaging of capsicum, the packaging of even our, the same ndengu, and you end up selling for nothing. In fact, at some point, we noticed that our farmers would have the packaging of tomatoes and potatoes to an extent that by the time that sack reaches Nairobi, it will produce 2 bags when it was sold for the equivalent price of 1 bag. So this bill has come in timely to address these issues of cartels and the middlemen who are actually denying the farmer the hard-earned cash that he should have, or he or she should have gotten. Very fraudulent activities that can be cut off by this particular bill. They have been exploited from all fronts. You look at the packaging, you look at the standards, you look at the prices. The farmer is suffering from all fronts, and this bill seeks to come out to help the farmer. Mr. Speaker, I'm also happy that this bill will address issues of how to develop that particular market. So when I talk about the bill, it is now talking about all the farmers in this country, how we can have this as an example of what we should do to all the farmers. The standards, the development of the crops, the marketing all round, and the value chain as it goes down or goes up, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this bill to me can only be implemented if we have the regulations that are recommended. I disagreed earlier on with Senator Kangata because we have been dealing with regulations over and over. Not to forget that regulations are actually a function of Parliament, and that is why, because Parliament cannot do everything and put everything in a major act, that is why Parliament decided that some of these things should be addressed through regulation. So we should not trash such regulations. They can help to improve and actualize what we mean in this particular bill. Mr. Speaker, talking of registration of farmers, it would be important to register them, because then you will know how many farmers are out there, how much produce is there. Therefore, then you know what you're marketing for. So we should not take this lightly. I think it leads to better marketing of our produce. Mr. Speaker, looking at the concerns that have been raised, we might have to think of an omnibus kind of, Senator Wambua, we might have to think of an omnibus kind of law that will address issues across the board, because this bill has come up with pertinent issues that are being suffered by each and every farmer. It is not just the ndengu farmer. So it cuts across. Probably we should be thinking of an omnibus kind of bill that will raise issues of standards, raise issue of registration of the farmers and what they are producing and how we can market, because it is a problem that cuts across. It is important that it has come out now through the ndengu revolution, but it is something that we have to address as a nation. And probably an omnibus kind of law would address all these regulations. Otherwise, then I'm thinking of how to regulate the milk industry as a Maasai. I know we have problems with our milk prices. We have a problem with overproduction. We have a problem with these cartels. Can you imagine, Mr. Speaker, right now, let me talk of Mashuru area where I come from. Right now, a liter of milk is selling for 27 shillings only. 1 liter of milk. And that 1 liter of milk, when you come to buy 1 liter of milk in the shelves here in Nairobi, it is three times that price. Total exploitations. And who is taking the milk from Mashuru? It is the Brookside, it is the KCC, it is everybody bringing milk all the way to Nairobi only to put it 3 times the price that you get from the local farmer. So this farmer is demoralized, gets very little for it. In fact, at some point I thought of joining the rest in selling the milk, and I felt like this is so much exploitation that you'd better even just drink your milk than to even sell. But you see, there's that farmer who cannot afford to just drink. There's that farmer who needs to market even if it is very little, but at the end of the day, they need food on their tables. So I think this is a very important bill. It has spoken for all the farmers across, and I think it can lead to a revolution in terms of how we are handling our farmers right from the villages. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this fully, and thank you, Senator, for coming up for such a brilliant idea. Thank you so much.
Senator Professor Kindiki.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I take this opportunity to thank my neighbor, Senator Wambua of Kitui, for his gallant step of bringing legislation on this very important crop that is not only precious, but it's a delicacy, not just in Kenya, but the entire world. Mr. Speaker, this crop, the mung beans, dengu, and as it is known variously, is an extremely easy to produce, yet precious and costly crop, which has been neglected, and in the few counties where this crop is grown, the farmers have been left on their own, both by the national government and the county governments of our country. I do know there was a feeble attempt by the governor of Kitui to try and do something around the crop, but I think that attempt fizzled out, the enthusiasm collapsed, and I think the governors from the other counties, including Makueni and Tharaka Nithi, parts of Meru County where this crop is grown, the governors did not give the governor of Kitui much support, and even the governor of Kitui herself, I think she never exhibited adequate effort and passion to sort out the issues surrounding this crop. Mr. Speaker, for purposes of brevity, having congratulated the mover of this bill, I would like to add a few comments that I think are useful in terms of improving this legislation. Mr. Speaker, sir, this legislation, and it is appropriately captioned as the mung beans bill, should remain as such and should not be localized, as some of my colleagues have already said, with a local name, which is Ndengu. I say so because, Mr. Speaker, during the long recess, I was in a small town in northern England, and the price of 1 kilo of dengu, well packaged, is approximately $20 US. Then one asks, how is it that whenever there is a local glut in the counties that produce this crop, that this crop fetches $1 at best, or $1.50? Why this difference? The difference is caused, Mr. Speaker, because the farmer in Tharaka, Kitui, Makueni, wherever else this crop is grown, has no capacity, has no support from their government, both county and national government, to get this product to England, to Geneva, Switzerland, to Middle East, Oman, Muscat, Dubai, Doha, to Asia, to South America, and to all the places in this world that I do know that this crop forms a part of a meal in many families across cultures, across continents, and they pay through the nose to buy this healthy delicacy. The other reason, other than the lack of support by both national and county government, is because of barriers in international trade that makes it completely difficult for developing countries like Kenya to get products like this, which are precious to the global market. And therefore, I insist, Mr. Speaker, that when the committee looks at this bill, they must find ways of coercing the government of the Republic of Kenya to have some responsibilities of addressing both tariff and non-tariff barriers that affect Kenyan products, including this product we are talking about this afternoon. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am of the view that this crop, because of its immense nutritional benefits, its immense contribution to healthy eating, which is a major concern for health experts and nutritionists around the world today, this crop should, if not must, be included in the National Strategic Reserve. I don't see why government should not put this crop in the National Strategic Reserve so that our soldiers in the barracks and other disciplined forces, our institutions of learning and other public institutions can consume this crop, and that can really help a government to actually offload this crop at a very good price for the local farmer. Mr. Speaker, sir, I also believe that this bill should be somehow linked with the warehousing receipt system, whose law we passed here last year, so that when there is an overproduction, the county government, which are the grassroots, should be able to receive this crop, store it for the farmers at maybe a minimum fee, and be able to sell it when the market has been found, and once an aggregation has been done good enough to attract even international buyers of this crop. Therefore, there must be a way not only to link this product to the strategic food reserve of the country, but also to link it to the warehousing receipt system we passed, whose law we passed sometimes last year. Mr. Speaker, sir, I also see a gap because the bill in its form does not provide for a subsidy system. The only thing that can help farmers recoup their profits and get a tidy sum out of their sweat and labor is subsidies. All over the world, governments subsidize agriculture. In fact, the richer countries, for example, put over 60% subsidy in agricultural production, whether you're talking of milk, potatoes, staple foods, including crops like this one. So I think increasingly there must be a subsidy program, especially from county governments where agriculture is devolved, to ensure that that subsidy is able to improve the prices of this commodity and make the farmer smile all the way to the bank. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am of the view that the quality of the mung beans grown in Kenya, especially in the counties where it is grown, is among the best in the world. It is extremely superior to the variety grown in India and parts of Asia, including Thailand, and also the variety that is grown in some few countries in South America. Mr. Speaker, for that reason, I am opposed to any genetic modification of the Kenyan product of mung beans. What we need to do is to have a way of certifying seeds so that the seed that the farmer uses are certified by the Kenya Seed Company, and that should include the yield. Mr. Speaker, as I end, I am also persuaded that this crop can grow in nearly 38 counties in this country. But it has been tried. I see no reason why this crop cannot be grown in parts of Isiolo, Marsabit, parts of places like Nyanza, Siaya, and Homa Bay and Migori. I see no reason why it can't grow in Kajiado, why it can't grow in Narok, and so many other counties. I have counted up to nearly 38 counties that can produce this crop. This is a crop that requires, Mr. Speaker, for those who don't know, less than 78 days to mature, and it requires like 3 or 4 days of rain, so long as they are spread within a 2 weeks period. If there is rain this week for 2 days, and another 2 days after 2 weeks, in fact, people will harvest. This is the most ideal low-hanging fruit if we are talking about food security in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, there must be some responsibility also on national government to try and promote the growth of this crop in as many counties as possible in our republic, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. My only plea is that this is a national legislation. It must be detailed as much as detailed as possible, and we should not leave the details to regulations, because I know the kind of influence under the Constitution, Article 190 following, the kind of influence that national legislation has on county and the running of counties is strictly speaking, much more superior than what legislation can do or policy. So I believe that the committee will do a good job. And for the farmers in Tharaka Nithi and Kitui and Makueni and other counties where they have been suffering, this is a crop which, this is the first step towards realizing and rewarding their labor. And I hope going forward, someone in Siekuru or Marimanti in Tharaka or Water in Makueni can be able to sell this crop for about 300 to 400 shillings a kilo. And someone willing or able to aggregate this crop can export it for at least $10, which is about 1,000 shillings per kilo. Final thing, Mr. Speaker, sir, on value addition. Some of the things and the low-hanging fruits and cost-free measures that county governments can make to add value and therefore enhance the price of this crop is sorting and packaging. 2 things: sorting, removing some of the not so quality seeds and debris, and also packaging. And the reason why that is done is because some of the high-end customers in rich neighborhoods and influential neighborhoods and supermarkets, they want something packaged nicely, and not the one that is sold in some of our markets downtown in sacks and that kind of thing, and tins. So, Mr. Speaker, sorting, and you aggregate, you sort, and package. And the packaging will assist counties to leverage on a very important aspect of international trade known as geographical indication. Because if you go to the United States as a way of example, you'll see bread, Nebraska bread, which comes from Nebraska. So I see no reason why, if Makueni Ndengu or the Tharaka Nithi Ndengu or the Kitui Ndengu is one of the best varieties as we have established, they can actually fetch a lot of money by simply indicating the geographic origin of that product, so that it's not Ndengu from anywhere. It is Ndengu from Tharaka Nithi, Ndengu from Kitui, Ndengu from Makueni, etc., etc. In international trade, you leverage a lot on the concept of geographical indications. That's why Switzerland has made a lot of money, because of its wine, and the French, and the Cape people, around Cape area in South Africa, where wines and vineyards are found. We must leverage on geographical indications to promote this product. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support.
Senator Ndeitu Kenyu.
Bwana Spika, nashukuru kwa kunipa fursa hii. Kwanza kabisa nataka kumpongeza Senator Wambua wa kutoka Kitui kwa kuleta mswada huu. Kwa kweli ukiangalia vile ambavyo serikali inasema ya kwamba tunahitaji usalama wa chakula, na kitu ambacho kitasaidia zaidi ni mimea ambayo inahitaji mvua kidogo ama maji yasiyo mengi ndio iweze kuwa katika kipaumbele ya hili jambo ambalo linasemwa na serikali. Ukiangalia ndengu inaweza kukuzwa katika sehemu nyingi, na ukiangalia kama Kenya ilivyo, sehemu nyingi za Kenya ni sehemu ambazo ni za ukame. Ukija Laikipia, uende Isiolo, uende Marsabit, uende Tharaka Nithi, Kitui na hata Machakos na sehemu nyingi. Mmea huu unaweza ukapandwa, ndengu inaweza ukapandwa na itafanya mambo mawili. Jambo la kwanza, watu ambao wanasema ukosefu wa kazi watapata kazi ya kufanya. Jambo la pili, ukitembea kama sehemu za Laikipia ambazo kuna ukame, kumekuwa na wale ambao wanafuga na kazi yao ni kuhamahama, watapata kazi ya kufanya na usalama utapungua. Kwa nini? Kwa sababu usalama umekithiri sana, kwa sababu unapata watu wengi kazi yao ni kupiga wengine wakitafuta mifugo yao, lakini wakipata kazi ya kufanya, kwa sababu ndengu ni mmea ambao utahitaji siku chache sana, pengine miezi 2.5 ndio uweze kuvuna. Na kwa sababu ndengu inaweza ikakaa kwa muda mrefu bila kutumia stima, yale watu wanaita na kwa Kiingereza fridge, utaki fridge. Ndengu unaiweka inakauka na itaweza kuitumia hata baada ya miezi mingi ikiwa pale. Jambo ambalo ningependa kusisitiza ni ya kwamba kaunti zetu ambazo zimepewa jukumu ya kuangalia mambo ya ukulima yaweke mambo ya hii mimea, na hasa ndengu, mimea ambayo inakuwa kwa muda mchache, waitilie mkazo. Na wakitilia mkazo, mimi na uhakika ya kwamba hili ndio jambo itasaidia katika mambo ya usalama katika chakula, na hata kupigana na hii kuna huu mchakato ambao unasemekana mchakato wa hustlers ama wale wanyonge walalahoi watafaidika sana. Na hili ndio jambo ambalo tunapaswa sisi kama seneti tupitishe mswada huu bila kupoteza wakati, na utasaidia Wakenya wengi walioko katika nchi ya Kenya, na Kenya yenyewe itapata mapato, kwa sababu watu wengi wakiingilia katika hii biashara ya kilimo biashara, na kilimo biashara itawezekana kwa mimea ambayo haihitaji mvua nyingi, kwa sababu sehemu nyingi za Kenya hazina mvua ya kutosha. Kwa hivyo mimi ninaunga mkono, nataka kumwambia seneta mwenzangu hii juhudi ni nzuri sana, na hata nataka kusema amechelewa. Angelifanya hivyo mwaka wa kwanza tulioingia hapa, lakini hata hivyo ni vizuri, kwa sababu tunaweza tukachukua wakati huu na fursa hii kuleta mabadiliko katika nchi yetu ya Kenya, na itawezekana ikiwa sheria kama hizi tutazipitisha kwa haraka, ndio tuweze kuwasaidia Wakenya wetu. Asante sana Bwana Spika.
Senator Naomi wako.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I stand to support this bill and also congratulate Senator Wambua, who is our Vice Chairman in Agriculture Committee. And from the time he introduced the bill, I've had the opportunity of working with him. And even when the Senate was in Kitui, we were able to do the public hearing there. And I saw the joy and the celebration in the hearts of the farmers in Kitui. And when we did the public hearing there, I was really encouraged, because I realized that what Senator Wambua is doing is touching the lives of his people on the ground. Mr. Speaker, as we all know, many of our people do a lot of work at their own levels. And people have different lifestyle, and we have farmers in our society and in different communities in almost all our counties who practice farming. But the unfortunate bit is our farmers have been neglected in many ways. When the farmers appeared before us that day, you could see the struggle they have gone through. They have not been supported by the government in any way. They have not been given any empowerment in doing their farming. And just by introducing this bill, Senator Wambua will improve
and enhance what his people are doing on the ground, and a lot of transformation, Mr. Speaker, I believe will take place through this bill that is being introduced. And so I must say that as a member of Agriculture Committee, I am proud and I'm happy that this bill will be passed, and Senator Enoch, who is our vice chair, will be very happy by the time this bill will be implemented. I support this bill because of the things that I've already said, and again, because the bill is to provide for the development, regulations, and promotion of magbean sector in Kenya. That is very good, and it is through that our farmers will be able to be assisted in different ways. Mr. Speaker, under part 2, you can see the responsibilities of the national county government, the role that the county government is to play, and the duties of the Agriculture Food Authority. Mr. Speaker, why I have liked the bill is because the roles of different people, different bodies have been well defined. And under this, you can see that number 4 says, for realization of the objectives set under number section 3, the authority shall put in place measures to improve the overall production of magbeans in the country. That means whatever is done at the county level is what will improve our production as a country, and also when we get to that level of exporting out of the country. Mr. Speaker, we can also see that it is to establish, coordinate, and monitor the implementation of national standards and policies relating to the magbean industry. I don't want to go touch on every area that has been mentioned, but there are a few areas that you cannot avoid touching on. Like under number 4E, establish linkages with international research agencies for the adoption of the best magbean farming and processing practices. I have picked on this in particular because many of our farmers have been frustrated because no one has helped them and linked them with international research agencies, and maybe struggled to see how they can produce and process their products. And so this bill will help our farmers in different ways and improve their lives, and also help them to create their own wealth. Mr. Speaker, under number 5, for the realization of the objectives set out under section 3, county executive committee member shall. That describes the role of the county executive. And you can see under D, market magbeans produced in the respective county, both locally and internationally. I have picked on the areas that will take the market of the magbeans from the local market to the country and out of the country, which will really promote the poor man, the poor woman who is doing her farming on the ground. Again, as you come to the end of that, under G, promote investment in the infrastructure necessary to facilitate access to markets and the transportation of magbeans and magbean products within and outside respective county. That is what I have just mentioned, and this will create job for many of our youth who have graduated, who have no job, and we have so many graduates who cannot, earn anything out of the good certificates they have, and now they either pull, they do, some small jobs in the market, and they use the wheelbarrow to survive. Mr. Speaker, I support this bill so that our young people who are jobless can be helped, so that the poor man, the poor woman on the ground who is doing the farming can be proud of what they are doing. As you come to H under 5, Mr. Speaker, it touches on another very good area that has been neglected for many years. Identify challenges affecting the mug bean industry and in the county and implement appropriate remedial measures. Mr. Speaker, as I said, many of our farmers have been discouraged in the past because there is no one who checks on the challenges that they face as they do their farming. When this is put in place, the Wanjiko on the ground will be able to tell the government or the system that will be put in place the challenges that they are facing, and it will be dealt with immediately. And out of that, then they'll be able to have good product of mug beans, which will also help them to sustain their livelihood. Mr. Speaker, number 6 is also another very good area. National county government shall, where they implement feeding programs within schools. I'm so excited about this, that the national and the county government shall implement the school feeding program out of this. We know that we have a lot of food insecurity in our country, and a lot of our children, and especially the areas that have been mentioned. I come from Marsabit, which is semi-arid, and in most of our counties, a lot of our children, many of our children are suffering because they don't even get good food, at least to have that good health that they need. So mug bean, when we do this and make sure that in the school program, feeding program, this will be included, we'll have taken care of our children, and they will have good meal at school, their health will be taken care of, and the parents will also be relieved. As you know, many families do not even afford 3 meals in a day. Mr. Speaker, I support this, and I want to once again congratulate Senator Enoch Wambua and encourage him to continue doing the good job for his people. Thank you.
Senator Pogisho. Honorable Senators, there being no more requests to contribute on this order, therefore call upon the mover to reply. Senator Wambua.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply. Mr. Speaker, I want to begin by really and very sincerely thanking members for their contribution in support of the Mung Beans Bill. The Speaker, on my own behalf, as the mover of this bill and the sponsor of the bill, and on behalf of Kenyans across this country in the 38 counties that the Senator Professor Kindiki has mentioned that are potential growers of ndengu, the Speaker, I want to say thank you so very much for the overwhelming support that this bill has received from members of the Senate of the Republic of Kenya. The Speaker, it may look like a small thing to a section of people in this country, but I want to assure these members, this House, and this country that the Senate of the Republic of Kenya has dedicated an entire afternoon to discuss ndengu, grown by suffering peasant farmers across this nation, is a very bold statement on the direction that this Senate is taking, Mr. Speaker. The Speaker,
I want to allay the fears of some of my colleagues, especially on the matter of regulation as proposed in this bill. First of all, to clarify that when it comes to the registration of dengue farmers, there is no licensing that is required. The only thing that this bill proposes to do, and which I believe is a very noble thing, the Speaker, is to ensure that we have a semblance of order in the industry. So that, as I said yesterday when I was moving this bill, we have records of how many farmers in any county are growing dengue. Where exactly in that county are they growing dengue? And what variety of dengue is being grown by which farmers in that county? Mr. Speaker, that is very important information, because then it helps the county executive member in charge of agriculture in that county to map out the locations of the farmers and deploy the services of extension officers to those farmers with ease. That is the whole essence of the registration of farmers on the ground. But outside, Mr. Speaker, the ground, there is also need to register these farmers so that at the national level, it becomes so easy for the minister, the cabinet secretary for agriculture, the cabinet secretary in charge of finance, the treasury, and even the president, to be able to approach international partners and financing institutions, either for loans or for grants, to support the farmers who are growing this crop. So, Mr. Speaker, the requirement for registration is noble. It is okay. On the matter, Mr. Speaker, of licensing of traders, yes, debate, Mr. Speaker, has taken place on the floor of this House with a senator or two suggesting lighter regulation and lighter requirements for licensing. But, Mr. Speaker, at the time that I was moving this bill yesterday, I took my colleagues through a journey that I walked to sponsor this bill. It is for the reasons that I gave yesterday, Mr. Speaker, that we do not want a situation where every trader in this country who has zero input in the production of this crop, all they need to do is wait for the month of February. We're in February now. Dengue is being harvested. And then towards the end of the year, there will be another harvest. That those traders will just wait for those 2 months in a year, and they can comfortably go to a motor vehicle dealer and take as many as 50 trucks, go around the country, mop up dengue at throwaway prices, at 20 shillings, 25 shillings, 30 shillings. And then 2 months or a month after that, they are raking in billions of shillings.
Also, Senator Nderitu.
Mr. Speaker, from what he's saying, what is wrong with that? Because, Mr. Speaker, trade is willing seller and willing buyer. Is there a problem with that, Mr. Speaker?
Senator Wambua.
The Speaker, because I'm replying to my bill, I will not want to say a lot of things on the willing buyer, willing seller principle. I can just confirm to you, Mr. Speaker, because I am a friend of Senator Kenywa from Laikipia, that he's not a trader. So the interests that he seems to want to protect are not personal interests, that I can confirm. But I can also confirm to you, Mr. Speaker, that the line of divide between willing buyer, willing seller, and absolute exploitation in as far as the trade in dengue is concerned is very thin. In fact, in most cases, that line does not even exist. Mr. Speaker, we are trying to protect our farmers from that thinking, that because you're so desperate to sell your commodity, which you have tilled the land and produced, and because you want money to go and pay school fees for your child, anybody who comes and offers anything, you can just give out your product, and it's okay, you know, it's okay. Mr. Speaker, that is the thing that we want to cure. And that's why we said yesterday, Mr. Speaker, this House must begin to stop legislating in vain. When we passed the warehousing receipt system bill, Mr. Speaker, it was to address exactly that issue that Senator Kenywa has raised. That in a situation like ours, the dengue situation, the farmers can, because they are registered, the county government can take the crop from farmers, store it in a warehouse, so that the trader who is willing to buy and the county government on behalf of the farmers willing to sell can negotiate better prices for our product. Mr. Speaker, that is exactly what we intend to cure in this bill. Mr. Speaker, there have been suggestions on the floor that perhaps we could do an omnibus legislation to bring together all crops. Mr. Speaker, I want to respectively bring the attention of my colleagues to what happened on the floor of this House and the floor of the National Assembly when the Crops Act was passed. Mr. Speaker, I said it yesterday, that there are acres and acres of space dedicated to listing of crops grown in this country, to the dismay of a lot of dengue farmers and to the dismay of the senator of Kitui County. Dengue is not even listed as a crop grown in this country. Mr. Speaker, we must cure these mischiefs. And the best way of doing it, Mr. Speaker, is to challenge my colleagues that we should not shy away from legislating on crops and issues that affect our farmers. This omnibus business, Mr. Speaker, though legitimate and legal, is a reason for the suffering of a lot of people in this country. But we need to be specific about the issues that affect our people. Mr. Speaker, in fact, we should be so ready to do legislation on almost everything, because after all, That is what we elected to do. To make laws, Mr. Speaker. To represent our people. To lift local issues and call national attention to the suffering of the people who have elected us. That's exactly why we elected Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to respectively tell my colleagues that instead of doing an omnibus legislation for crops, I challenge my colleagues to bring as many bills as there are crops grown in this country so that we fix the problems facing each farmer in every corner of this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to state that, Mr. Speaker, time has come. Through this small little effort by the senator of Kitui County, that now as a Senate, we must move, Mr. Speaker, from making pronouncements in public rallies that we are the champions and defenders of devolution. We have said enough of that, Mr. Speaker. That is enough said. A time has come that we must now move into action and be seen to be real defenders of devolution, and agriculture is a fully devolved function under Constitution 2010. The Speaker, let us all, as a Senate, be seen to speak the voice of our people, and together, Mr. Speaker, as I said yesterday, we aspire to shared prosperity, where a farmer in Lamu feels protected and supported as much as a farmer in Kiambu. That, Mr. Speaker, a farmer in Marsabit, in Kajiado, in Narok, in Samburu, keeping their livestock, they feel supported and facilitated just as much as the tea farmers in Muranga, in Nyeri, and in all parts of this country in Kericho are supported. The Speaker, the principle of shared prosperity will only be made real and will only make sense to our people if truly we behave as though each Kenyan deserves protection and support and facilitation under the law. The Speaker, with those many remarks, we will take note of all the contributions that have been made by our colleagues. And Mr. Speaker, without any particular order, I want to specifically thank Senator Faria, Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., Senator Agnes Zani, Senator Johnson Sakaja, Senator Shionga, Senator Peter Njerundwiga, Senator Irungu Kangata, Senator Agnes Milgo, Senator Abshiro Alake, Senator Ladama Olekina, Senator Judith Pareno, Senator Professor Kithure Kindiki, Senator Nderitu Kinyua, and Senator Naomi Wako for their contribution to making this bill even a better bill, and for their commitment, Mr. Speaker, to stand with the Ndengu growers in this country and make sure that they attain national recognition and support. The Speaker, I beg to reply. Mr. Speaker, sir, Having said that, I wish to request that pursuant to Standing Order 61.3, the putting of the question be deferred to a later date. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Wambua. Honorable Senators, I therefore defer putting the question to Tuesday, 16th February 2021. Next order.
Order number 9, the Cooperative Societies Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 11 of 2020, second reading.
Senator Dr. Agnes Zani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the Cooperative Societies Amendment Bill 2020 be read a second time. Mr. Speaker, in one way or another, we have associated ourselves and have benefited from cooperative societies. We are members, we have borrowed, we've been part of management processes for cooperative societies. Savings and credit cooperative circles have come under increasing public scrutiny of late, mostly on charges of loss of members, and that creates a sense of wanting to find out what might be happening therein so that they can be able to address that issue. These challenges delve into matters of management within those cooperative societies. To date, Mr. Speaker, there are about 23 registered cooperative societies with a membership of 14 million. Those are very many Kenyans trusting cooperative societies. And they hold 732 billion of members' savings and control an asset base of 1 trillion and a 700 billion loan portfolio. Societies have evolved over time. We have deposit, non-deposit societies. We have hierarchy of societies. For example, Mr. Speaker, we have apex societies, we have secondary societies, we have primary societies, all serving different members in different ways. Apex societies tend to be major and they operate at a national level, whereas primary societies tend to operate within community levels. Mr. Speaker, there's a lot of potential for cooperative societies and for different groups who aim to come together to bring about better cooperative movement that need to be tapped. Now we have an act that is already in place that governs cooperative societies, and this particular act came into being in 1997. Way before Constitution 2010. And therefore, it's important because cooperative societies is one of the devolved functions under Schedule 4 of the Constitution. But so far, we don't have a legislative mechanism of enhancing the management and operation of cooperative societies at the county levels. And this is what this bill seeks to do. It actually seeks to amend the Cooperative Societies Act number 12 of 1997 so as to align it to the Constitution of Kenya. One of the best ways that it does this is by setting out national functions and also county functions that should be followed through. Mr. Speaker, this is the act. And this act is very, very important because it actually summarizes most of the issues within the cooperative societies. I just want to take you through some of the issues that the act deals with because this is an amendment bill. So apart from differentiating the structures at national and county, most of the issues that are already addressed by the act remain the same. Basically, by creating a national structure, which is already in place, that is controlled and supported by a commissioner, we are seeking to create an alternative structure at the county level where the CEC member is able also to run some of the key issues. So in effect, we're not changing the basis of the Act. The Cooperative Societies Act, as perceived and as stipulated in 1997, is not drastically changed by this particular proposed bill, but it actually tries to ensure that that differentiation and that a more active role can be put out at the county level, and that is very, very critical. I just want to go through some of the parts that are covered by that act, just so that we have a feeling about exactly what this bill is talking about. Because, Mr. Speaker, when you go through the bill, being an amendment bill, it keeps referring to the various sections in the particular act, and therefore we need to just have a good idea of what this could be. In part 2, for example, of the act, we talk about officers. It talks about officers, commissioners, and various officers. In part 3, it's about the registration of cooperative societies, including the procedures, amendment of any of the bylaws, for example, and issues like of evidence of registration. Mr. Speaker, and in the act, each of these details of what should be done and how it should be done is put into place. For example, if it's evidence of registration, then the cooperative has to give the necessary documentation to show that they are a cooperative society. They must have they must hand in the minutes, they must hand in their governing authorities, and all these things are really proper. In fact, the Cooperative Act is the Cooperative Societies Act is one of the acts which, if you read through, is very, very extensive. And as we know so far, this is the act that is used for many of the cooperative societies that are in place. We have a regulatory system, which is SASTRA, but that regulatory system is also an authority that regulates what is meant to be put in by the Act. But the Act itself, so far, is a regulator for many of the cooperative societies, but now more and more, the authority is playing a more important role in coming into place in terms of ensuring the specific processes of the particular act. So in part 4, they talk about the privileges of the registered society. In 5, rights and liabilities of members, qualification of members, members of the cooperative society, voting rights, transfer of shares, rights of members, Mr. Speaker. In part 6, duties of the cooperative society, registration address, for example, of the cooperative society, because you could have a society that does not have an address and people don't know where to find it. Such issues have already been addressed. Estimates of income and expenditure that have to be very well known and very transparent, account and audit, production of books and other documents, etc. So at various levels of the Act, various issues are addressed: rights and obligations of cooperative society, property and funds of cooperative societies, charges of cooperative societies, inquiry and inspection, and including issues of dissolution of the society, settlements of disputes, etc. So this bill, in a systematic way, moves on to address each of the various aspects in terms of now amending that particular act. Mr. Speaker, allow me just to go clause by clause, because in the main act, what we have is only a commissioner who is in charge of running cooperative societies. But this bill then wants to introduce the whole aspect of having the CEC members. So for example, in clause 2 amends the Cooperative Act, referred to as the Principal Act, is amended, for example, and in the definition of the word cooperative society by inserting the words "and includes a provisionally registered cooperative society." So this particular bill introduces also that when a society is provisionally registered, then the rules also apply to it immediately after the words in section 4. And then it deletes a minister, and instead of a minister, it puts cabinet secretary. This is aligning the act so that it is in vogue with the new constitution. Mr. Speaker, let me say here that at one point, Senator Milgo also had parallel amendments to the Cooperative Societies Act, but we had a meeting and we, at pre-publication stage for this particular bill in the Committee of Tourism, we're able to look at it and delegate and decide, differentiate exactly what she was looking out for and what I was looking out for. What Senator Milgo was looking out for was to now amend the act in terms of the provisions and look at specifically aligning it to just ensure that the terminologies, and she does this across every stage of that act, to be in line with what is now the new thing that we're doing. But in this particular act, we are looking at the specific, trying to make that division so that we have a system where we have the, on one hand, the running parallel of the act or of the bill at the moment along the line of the cabinet secretary, and on the other side the commissioners, and also on the other side specifically at the CEC level. So the bill proceeds to explain the cabinet secretary defined, the county executive member and their roles. Clause 3 is very, very critical because it gives the Principal Act amendment, but also adds some of the important specifications that need to be put as guiding principles. For example, all persons shall, in performance of their functions under this act, be guided by the following principles: autonomy, democratic rights, public participation, etc., which are very, very key and very, very important. At Part 1A, the critical separation of the functions of the national and county governments is put into place. And the roles of the national government are put into place and discussed extensively at 2B. So we have 2B because the provisions have already put, the earlier provisions have already been put in the Act. So these are new sections that have been put in as amendments to that particular Act. So the roles of the national government and the roles of the county government, and specifically for the national government, issues like such as formulating a national policy framework and standards for the development of growth of cooperative society is very, very key. We have maintaining a register of approved audit firms in the cooperative sector so that these specific firms are known, they are known to be existing, that register is put, and even the audit firms can be identified. Formulate management standards of cooperative societies, basically the management aspect to ensure that these societies can be well run. Promotion of good governance, etc., etc. So the provisions that are made from 2A right up to 2K are provisions that have to be handled at the national level. So whereas previously everything was being handled at the national level, because we are bringing the county level, we're giving certain responsibilities that do not clash to the national and other responsibilities to the county. Then in clause 2 also, the national government shall in the performance of functions and collaborate with county government. This is very, very key and very, very close to the spirit of the Constitution between the cooperation that exists between the national government and the county government. And then, Mr. Speaker, at 2D, we have the functions of the county governments and what is expected of them. So each county government shall, and in all this, very, very key, again, formulate and implement strategies, guidelines, and measures in line with the national policy, promote, facilitate, and register cooperative societies, and especially this at the county level, because the idea is to try as much as possible to be able to boost from the 23 registered cooperative societies so we can have more and more that are mushrooming at the county level and they can be tackled at the county level. So promote, facilitate, and register primary, especially societies, promote and facilitate value addition, adoption, come up with new ways of coming up with new products, come up with new ways of having members enticed by those new products, find ways of making it easier, for example, for members to be able to borrow loans, for members to be able to satisfy some of the provisions that they need to satisfy within their particular context. These also go through issues like establish and maintain a county cooperative societies research and information center, which can talk about the challenges that maybe the cooperative societies are facing and how this can be enhanced, and how generally they can actually be applied so that they can perform all these functions that are necessary for the mandate of the county government in the betterment of cooperative sector. Mr. Speaker, especially for the primary and the secondary societies, most of these operate at the county level, and because these are still new and mushrooming, some of these systems are not really in place. Mr. Speaker, it is not very new for us, and over time we've had, for example, of certain cooperative societies that have started, but for one reason or another, they've taken up maybe membership from members, but after some time, they haven't been able to be sustainable. And that suggests that we need to find a way to cushion both the cooperative societies and also the people, and make sure there are stringent laws that are there to control the borrowing that takes place within those cooperative societies, the principles of the returning of the monies to those particular societies, the products that are run by those societies, and all the general things that are very, very key in running of these particular societies. So at 6, the clarification of the distinction of the apex society and the primary society is given extensively, and an application to register a primary society will be the responsibility of the county executive member. So the county executive member, one, will have to find out, for example, how many primary and secondary societies exist, how well run are they, what issues I imagine, and how can those issues be assessed and analyzed, excuse me. Then at 3, very, very key, an application for registration shall be submitted together with, it just now gives the specific things. Mr. Speaker, when you look at the bill and when you look at the part that dwells on the national part, there is not a lot of addition that is made. So the main addition in this particular bill are the parts, and this is where the extras are given. For example, in terms of registration, when it is done, the specifications are given. So at clause 6, these specifications are given, the prescribed fee, the minutes of the members, all these are necessary, and I'd mentioned them before in terms of putting them together so that they can actually move. At clause 6, one of the critical issues that is very, very important is that the commissioner or the county member needs to explain where they failed to register a society, the reason for the failure to register that society, and also give time for an appeal to be made for the registration of that society. Clause 7 deals with the main act. In the main act, the clause 7 deals with the provisional registration. This is where we don't have the full registration yet, but the provisional registration that is put into place, and the commissioner or the county executive, as the case might be, for both national and county, will have to look at the application to ensure that the application does not complies with the provisions of the act, that the bylaws have been put into place. And on the basis of these not being followed, then they can reject and only be able to give provisional registration until these issues have been addressed sufficiently. Mr. Speaker, I will just pick certain clauses because each of the clauses then deals with the specific areas that I had spoken about, and then really just understand that in each of the following clauses, that's exactly the format that is followed through. Again, the role of the commissioner and the county committee shall notify the applicant of the decision to reject the application within 14 days of that rejection, and it is incumbent to that cooperative society to be able to put back things into place and be able to address them sufficiently. Section 8 deals with the compliances issue and how the commissioner should deal with this specifically, and how those can be specifically addressed. And in areas, for example, where altogether the provision registration of the cooperative society has been cancelled, then the cancellation of the provisional registration has to be put into place, it has to be allowed, it has to be informed, people have to be informed, and it has to be adequately registered as well. And where the cooperative society ceases to be registered as a cooperative society, either the commissioner or county executive member may appoint a competent person who is the liquidator. Mr. Speaker, we saw the importance of especially the liquidator as very key with very specific instructions of how they should proceed with the liquidation process when we were handling the process, the issue of Moi University SACCO that was brought to this table, to this house by Professor Kamar, and the processes that the liquidator should have been able to follow at each of these specific stages. So the issue of the liquidator and how that should be put into place is dealt with. The issue also of the penalty clause and the fine of 1,000 shillings for each day for which of the offense continues to be done, and specifically a fine not exceeding 50,000 shillings. So it is a cumulative fine of 50,000 shillings, or in the case of a continuing offense, then an exceeding fine of 1,000 to be paid consistently. Mr. Speaker, because I see my moving time is almost complete, I think I have just about 2 minutes. I think I've given an indication by going through each of these specific clauses of the understanding of exactly what this amendment is all about, so that there is an understanding that it is really putting the act to be compliant with the specific constitution. So right through the act in the different stages in the bill, in the different stages, for example, in clause 10, we deal with amendment to the bylaws. In 11, we are dealing with appeal against refusal for the rights that have been given, and across the various stages of the bill, the different provisions for actually how we should proceed with the various matters that this bill wants to address. So right up from clause 23, specifically, which deals specifically with the issue of gazettement of each of the societies, right up to clause 38, which deals with liquidation, through clause 41, through clause 42, through clause 47, through clause 51, which deals with the issues of tribunals, clause 52 that talks about the tribunal and each of their specific roles that they have to play, and the introduction of the Judicial Service Commission in consultation with Salaries and Enumeration Committee, and where they are called in to make determination of some of the issues that might be in contention. In clause 58, also the bill amends at section 85 of the Cooperative Societies Act, the Judicial Service Commission appointing a secretary to the tribunal. At clause 54, it seeks to amend 85 of the Cooperative Societies Act to provide for the qualifications of appointment as secretary and functions of the secretary. And last, at clause 55 of the bill, seeking to amend section 86 of the Cooperative Societies Act number 12 of 1997 and bestow the power to establish branches of the tribunal to the Judiciary Service Commission in consultation with the chairperson of the tribunal. Because the issue of societies is very, very broad and involves a lot of some of the things that I have addressed in this bill, it becomes very, very incumbent to ensure that these various provisions are clearly spelled out across the various levels of the bill. So with this, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move and request Senator Wambua to second. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Wambua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand to second the Cooperative Societies Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 11 of 2020. And Mr. Speaker, as I second this bill, I want to first thank and congratulate Senator Dr. Agnes Zani for bringing these amendments to the Cooperative Societies Act of 1997. Speaker, it is worth noting that the operating act governing cooperative societies in this country was passed more than 13 years before the promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, which in effect means that although the cooperative societies are a devolved function according to the fourth schedule of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, the enabling legislation is a lot older than the reality of the operations of the cooperative societies in the counties. The Speaker, it was important to note what the Senator Zani has just told this House, that cooperative societies hold more than 700 million in loan portfolio and more than $1 trillion in asset base. The Speaker, that alone puts an obligation on governors and leaders in this country to ensure that the cooperatives movement does not collapse, because if it does, then it goes down with a lot of wealth and a lot of resources belonging to the people of this country. So, Speaker, I want to rush through this bill and say, first of all, that the amendment bill, though I have congratulated Senator Zani for bringing it up, is actually long overdue. It should have happened a long time ago. And it's good because now it aligns the cooperative movement with the Constitution of Kenya 2010. So, Speaker, the importance of cooperative societies cannot be gainsaid in terms of the role they play in ensuring economic growth and development of our country. This bill, the Speaker, proposes that the apex societies be managed by the national government. The Speaker, that does not need any belaboring. Why? Because the Speaker, by their very nature, apex societies are national in terms of both interest and location. And so it will present a nightmare for any particular county to be managing apex societies. So the provision, the Speaker, is very welcome, that the apex societies, the management of those societies becomes naturally the province of the national government. The Speaker, going to the clauses, I am very impressed with the Speaker by clause 7 of the bill, which seeks to amend Section 6 of the Cooperatives Societies Act number 12 to provide for the refusal to register a cooperative society. Why am I impressed by this provision, Mr. Speaker? The Speaker, where there is no order, it is fertile ground for anarchy. And for people to do things in ways and manners that are whimsical, so that then individuals begin to give character to the societies as opposed to individuals fitting into a structure. Mr. Speaker, this provision is timely because it provides for details of registration of societies, refusal to register societies, decisions to suspend registration of societies, decisions to cancel registration of societies, and most importantly, a mechanism for appeal on whatever decision is taken on registration, whether to register or not to register, whether to cancel or suspend registration. That brings clarity, Mr. Speaker, and order in the entire registration regime of our cooperative societies. Mr. Speaker, also having looked at this bill, I'm also very impressed by the clauses on liquidation account. So, Speaker, by and large, what this bill does is that it places responsibility and duty on the Commissioner for Cooperatives to make critical decisions, Mr. Speaker, on determining the banks where liquidation accounts will be opened, and even making decisions on amounts to be paid out for liquidation after determinations, Mr. Speaker, have been made. Mr. Speaker, this bill also in clause 52 seeks to amend section 84 of the Act on the remuneration of members of the tribunal by providing what the members shall be paid, and that responsibility, Mr. Speaker, is given to the Judicial Service Commission in consultation with the Salaries and Remuneration Commission as they shall determine. So, Mr. Speaker, in a nutshell, I support this bill and take note of the fact that, Mr. Speaker, we have a working dictionary in the name and character of Senator Dwiga, who was once the Minister for Cooperatives in this country. And so this bill will get our support. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Order,
I second, Mr. Speaker.
Have you concluded your contribution, Senator Wambua?
Yes, I have, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Wambua. Honorable Senators, it's now 6:30 p.m. Time to interrupt business of the Senate. The House therefore stands adjourned until Tuesday, 16th February 2021 at 2:30 p.m.